to resurrect.
Important to talk about this, to remind people of what happened, to remind them of what humans can do to one another.
Was Menschen anderen Menschen antun können.
I'm Amy Leibowitz. The producer was John Murphy.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, and thanks for joining the show. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app or on YouTube. It's 3 minutes to 6 o'clock, and we're on air till 8:37 this morning with you. Winnipeg, wow, yesterday, so slippery everywhere. Did you try to go anywhere sort of mid-morning? It was just wild out there. Today, another wintry day, a high of minus 15 with wind chill. It'll feel like minus 33. Let's say good morning to the team today. Corey Funk is back directing and covering the commute. Abby Adeyemi in our control room behind the controls, and we'll be covering weather. He's our senior technician. Kevin Ipatebo is here, who is our YouTube producer. Hi, Kev. And if you're watching on YouTube, good morning, everybody. Let's go to Heather Well. She's live in our news center right now, and she's going to tee up our day with the headlines.
Good morning. Well, almost 36 people who live at the Manwin Hotel have been ordered out after city inspectors found safety deficiencies. The owner says more than half of the tenants who initially complied with that order are back because there's nowhere else for them to go. Marion Willis at St. Boniface Street Link says more work on the building needs to be done, but forcing people out is not a solution. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation says confusion and extreme opposition doomed a proposed ecological corridor in western Manitoba. The federally funded project along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Wildlife Federation's Rob Olson says landlords felt they weren't sufficiently consulted. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather's with us, of course, live throughout the whole morning. Coming up in the show today, we have a feature report from Bartley Kivas. The Premier has said the economic horse drives the social cart. Well, a federal survey of major mining and energy projects suggests that the horse needs a little hay and water. Bartley Kivas is going to be on with a full report on what that looks like and what that means. In addition, we continue our series looking at how friendly our province really is, how welcoming we are or not when it comes to newcomers. This is part of a CBC National series, and today we're going to check in with someone who says they always dreamed of coming to Winnipeg, but now that she's here, is it all she dreamed it would be? Not in all ways, so we're going to hear more of her story coming up in the program as well. Right now, let's stay tuned for World Report. It's 1 minute to 6 o'clock, the latest on CBC's National News.
On Cue with Tom Power.
So imagine you're cast as an actor in a film, but there's no script, there's no plot. Your job is to create the character from the time they were born until their mid-50s. That was the challenge that faced Marianne Jean-Baptiste in the new film Hard Truths. She'll be here to tell you what made it worth it.
Oh, you can pipe down and all standing there like an ostrich.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. By the end of business hours today, we will know exactly who is in the race to take over as leader of the Liberal Party. Candidates have until 5 p.m. Eastern to get their nomination packages in. But already, some frontrunners are starting to emerge, and so are their proposed policies. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, the new leader, new direction for the Liberal Party?
Seems like, Marcia. Let's start with a pretty stunning admission from Chrystia Freeland that a government led by her would not move forward with legislation to implement changes to the way capital gains are taxed, backtracking on a policy from her own budget less than a year ago, which she'd promoted as fundamental to tax fairness in this country, and now sowing more confusion smack in the middle of tax season about how this reversal might work. Yesterday, Freeland's campaign laid out that the lower tax rates small businesses and entrepreneurs are going to pay in Donald Trump's America for the next few years. Well, Canada has to respond to that if it doesn't want to risk losing both jobs and investment. And then we have the consumer carbon tax. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives have been jonesing to run an election on this for months now. But it appears that the top contenders in this leadership race may have killed it already. None of them support continuing to increase it this spring. There is space between them on whether to abandon it altogether or just pause it. But how to adjust the overall emissions strategy to make up for it, that's still a big question mark. No minister more identified with this tax than Stephen Guilbeault. He's endorsing Mark Carney, and he's been pained to explain this about-face.
I have to come to the conclusion that Canadians aren't supporting it. I've tried. I've worked really hard on this for many years, and we tried our best.
And there's another signature Liberal tax measure that may also be on life support in the days to come. The digital services tax, Canada's attempt to make global tech giants pay a 3% tax on their Canadian earnings, something the NDP campaigns hard on. Freeland invested a lot of political capital trying to negotiate a way to do this multilaterally. But Donald Trump's administration signaled earlier this week a global deal on this ain't going to happen. So if Canada doesn't pull this tax, it's highly likely the Americans are going to retaliate at what's already a threatening point in the relationship.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Donald Trump has given his first sit-down interview since Monday's inauguration. The U.S. president sat in the Oval Office with Sean Hannity of Fox News. The wide-ranging interview included comments by Trump that he may take revenge on his predecessor. The CBC's Katie Simpson has more.
Any Canadian tuning into Donald Trump's interview, hoping to get some sort of insight or update about his latest tariff threat, well, the issue didn't come up. Instead, the president slammed his predecessor over Joe Biden's decision to grant preemptive pardons to members of his own family, lawmakers, and other public servants.
And you know, the funny thing, maybe the sad thing, is he didn't give himself a pardon. And if you look at it, it all had to do with him.
Several times, Trump was asked directly whether he'd like Biden or others to be investigated either by Congress or the Attorney General, to which he began musing about revenge.
I went through 4 years of hell. I spent millions of dollars in legal fees, and I won. But I did it the hard way. It's really hard to say that they shouldn't have to go through it also. It is very hard to say that.
Trump also threatened to withhold federal assistance to California unless it changes its wildfire fighting tactics. He's standing by his decision to delay the TikTok ban, downplaying concerns about national security, saying the app made him more popular with younger voters. And he again promised to release classified documents about the assassination of JFK. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Firefighters in Los Angeles County are dealing with another fast-moving fire. A helicopter dumps water on flames from the Hughes fire. It's about 70 kilometers northwest of Los Angeles. More than 50,000 people are on an evacuation alert, but officials say the situation is different than the fires closer to the city. Matthew Van Hagen is with the local fire department.
We're not dealing with a large population and a large amount of residential homes, as we saw with those two fires. Out here, it's more sparsely populated. However, out here, we are dealing with high winds, along with thick fuel bed and steep topography.
There are reports this morning of a new fire that has broken out near Bel Air. The fire is threatening structures in the Los Angeles residential enclave and has forced the shutdown of a major highway. In the town of Jasper, Alberta, some residents are still waiting on temporary housing. 6 months ago, wildfire ravaged the Alberta community. And as Julia Wong tells us, officials say plans to start rebuilding are stuck in limbo.
Here we are on the ground, and it's all ready for something, and the something isn't coming.
Loni Clettle stands in an empty lot in the town of Jasper. She's disappointed. After losing her home in the wildfire, she's been in a hotel for 6 months, and temporary housing promised by the Alberta government has not arrived yet.
This further state of limbo is actually awful.
The Alberta government offered roughly $100 million to build permanent single detached houses, but there's only room for 60 of those units on the parcels of land set aside by Parks Canada. The town says it needs high-density housing for more than 600 households. Alberta's Community, Seniors and Social Services Minister Jason Nixon says the province isn't budging from its single-family home position.
If we don't have a project that meets those requirements, then this money can't be spent.
Parks Canada is working to get interim high-density housing, but without the province's contribution, there won't be enough for everyone who needs it. Director of Recovery for the Municipality of Jasper, Michael Fark.
And especially now that we understand that the province is not going to be bringing any interim housing, we need to find other solutions.
As for Clettle, she's hopeful things get worked out, and soon, because if not...
We have no idea where we're going to be, and that's not a great feeling.
But one felt by many still looking for a place to call home. Julia Wong, CBC News, Jasper, Alberta.
More than 1,000 LGBTQ plus couples in Thailand tied the knot today. The law giving them the same rights as heterosexual couples has now come into effect. Thailand is one of just 3 countries in Asia to recognize same-sex unions and the first in Southeast Asia. Patrick Falk has the details.
At one of the swankiest shopping malls in Bangkok, some 180 same-sex couples married in an event celebrating a legal milestone. For 33-year-old Purnapus Chirasukon and her partner, it was momentous to finally be able to say, I do. I feel so many things have been unlocked and our definition of family feels more complete than ever, she says. The new law grants same-sex couples the same adoption and inheritance rights as heterosexual couples in the kingdom for the first time. It also takes out gender-specific terms like husband and wife from the Thai civil code covering marriage, replacing them with terms like individual and spouse. Thailand has long been considered LGBTQ-friendly, but same-sex marital recognition was hard-fought in the predominantly Buddhist country. The government hopes it might help boost rainbow tourism. Taiwan and Nepal are the only 2 other places in the region to legalize it. Canada legally approved same-sex marriage in 2005. Thailand's milestone comes at a time when many people in the US are concerned the new Trump administration could roll back LGBTQ rights as it did during his previous term in office. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Singapore.
And your private dancer, a dancer for money.
Tina Turner's Private Dancer is the album that established her as a solo superstar. But there was one song that never made it onto the record, and for decades it was believed to have been lost until today.
I've been sitting here for the last few hours, looking at you, stretching my imagination to the point of where I can maybe get my hands on you.
The song is called Hot For You, Baby, and it was played to the public for the first time early this morning on BBC Radio 2. The track will be released as a single, and it is included on a new deluxe edition of Private Dancer being released in March. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
That is still to this day one of the best shows I ever saw in Winnipeg. Tina Turner. Crazy. 6:10 a.m. is the time. We are live in downtown Winnipeg. I'm Mercy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. Thanks for joining us here on the morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. You are with CBC. Abby Adeyemi and Corey Funkin in a moment with weather and traffic. And behind our YouTube controls, Mr. Kevin Ipatebo, along with Chin Kai Chang. Heather Wells with our news center headlines in a moment as well. Also this hour on the show, we're going to be hearing a little bit about the community impact that the Winnipeg Foundation was able to make over the past year. They have their annual report that's out, so we'll hear more about that. Also, Dr. Bardwaj is going to talk about something very interesting on our medical column. There's a new indicator that might help doctors diagnose concussion. And it has to do with right after a concussion or potential concussion happens, you hit your head hard, whether it's an athlete or a person. What happens in those moments? So physically what the person does. So we'll explain all of this and we'll look at what they studied. So that's coming up with Dr. Bardwaj this hour at about 10 to 7. Right now I mentioned Heather Welsh. She is here with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg mother wants to know how fluid from an IV ended up in her 2-year-old's arm tissue, causing swelling, skin tearing, and first-degree burns. Trilina Francois says she took her son Logan to Children's Emergency last week because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. He was admitted and given intravenous antibiotics, but she says it took the nurses 3 times before they could find a vein to insert the IV. We'll hear what happened after coming up. As well, Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to a major mining and energy projects. That's according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. Natural Resources Canada says Manitoba has $1.7 billion worth of major mining and energy projects on the way. Only PEI has fewer dollars devoted to construction in those sectors. We'll hear about it coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
Welcome.
We'll check in, of course, with Heather throughout the morning. So Abby is here with a look at our weather. Corey's here with traffic. Hi, you two. How you doing?
Hello.
Woo! I'm throwing my mic around. I want to actually talk to Corey first about something.
Bring it on.
So we got off the air yesterday, Corey, and you had so many things to cover in terms of the issues in the morning.
Yep.
And then when I got on the roadways, I very quickly realized why. I have rarely seen a day that was that slippery. Just absolutely, obviously they were trying to keep up with sanding and salting where they could. I mean, there was no way.
Yeah.
I was just grateful that people where I was going, at least yesterday mid-morning, it was early afternoon, were going slow enough. I had to go 40 all over the city, maybe even slower. Lots of distance between the vehicles. It was just like a skating rink.
Even just on my run, watching cars just trying to, I just watched cars sliding just on the road everywhere, the whole way from just my short run from here back home.
Even if you're going slow.
Yeah, you just watched everyone just slide right up into to stop anywhere they were. It was wild out there.
Yeah,
and you just had to grip the steering wheels with both hands. You had no room to let the other, because it was just fishtailing here and there.
No room for error.
No room for error.
There was a truck that passed me on Notre Dame, and I just kept thinking, please don't slide out of your lane by accident. And I was just really grateful everybody was driving to conditions. So, way to go. We often report on bad things, so let's just give people...
We actually had someone call I didn't have time to pass it along yesterday. We had someone call the commuter line yesterday to be like, hey, just heads up, congrats to all the semis who are really driving really, really well right now and stepping up, all the semi drivers in the city, because it can be tough going.
Seriously.
But,
Sometimes I just want to give kudos to the semi-drivers, because at this period of the year, most of them drive really, learners, and they're just really, really slow.
Yeah, and we need that. All right, so let's talk about today, and hopefully it won't be as icy out there. What's the weather going to be like, Abby?
Another cold one for us across the city. We're going to see clear skies to start, but some clouds will roll in throughout the day. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds with breezy conditions and frigid wind chills, which will impact most of the regions across the province. But right now, Winnipeg, -21, mostly clear. We're seeing ice crystals at the airport. It's a nice start though, but things will get chilly as we get into the day. Clouds will start to roll in this morning. Some sunshine will come late in the afternoon, but it's going to be cold with a high around -15, and the wind chill this morning actually feels like -33. So frostbite is still a thing. Southern central Manitoba, we could see this cold and breezy weather with wind chills also making it feel colder, and then the north will stay cold with snow and brisk winds, particularly for Thompson and Churchill. But for Winnipeg today, we're starting at -21, and we're going to see some sunshine today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
So how about the actual traffic this morning then, Corey?
So far, knock on wood, haven't heard of any major issues out there this morning. But if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you see something going on, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. Let's just hope it's not as slippery as yesterday. 204-788-3093.
Well, Over the past year, millions of dollars have gone to support community projects in Manitoba. The Winnipeg Foundation has released its annual report about this. The organization is a community foundation, you might know, and that means that the funds they receive are invested and the interest is distributed to local charities. Sky Bridges is president and CEO of the Winnipeg Foundation and up early and on the line with us to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning and happy Thursday, Marcy Marcusa. It's wonderful to be here with you on your show.
Happy Thursday, Sky Bridges. We like to call it Junior Friday around here. So how did you guys do this year? What's the top line in the report in terms of what you're able to distribute to charities?
What an incredible year, truly. We distributed $91.6 million to community that supported over 1,100 charities. Truly, truly remarkable. I have to tell you, it's amazing to work for this organization because our vision is a community, is where a Winnipeg, where community life flourishes for all. And there's no doubt that the numbers speak to that incredible impact from the generosity of our donors to support the incredible work of the charities in our city.
How did this compare to previous years? And then if you want to take a longer view, I'm just curious, 5 years out, after the start of the pandemic, is the trajectory been on the up and up?
We have been going up and up. And in particular, though, this year, it was a total of over 8,300 gifts received that totaled $541 million. Now, the reason, and this is an extraordinary year in terms of generosity, because in particular, the incredible gift from Miriam Bergen, the late Miriam Bergen, in 2022, 2 years ago, we would have announced the largest gift in Canadian history of $500 million. And so it takes time, even from that announcement from 2022, to actually realize the gift. And so this year, we had a transfer of the funds from her estate, which included this incredible gift of Edison Properties, the company, to the foundation. And so this was an extraordinary year because of that. It was for sure the biggest year in contributions to the Winnipeg Foundation because of her extraordinary gift.
How do you decide, Sky, how much of the interest to spend?
So we have a policy that sets out, that makes that decision. That policy has a few different inputs into it. One is how are the markets doing? We also measure and take into account inflation. And also we want to make sure that we don't have large swings in what we're distributing because we want it to be stable, constant funding. So generally speaking, our distribution with all of our flow-through gifts and other contributions is about 5% a year. But the funds that are coming from the assets that we invest this over past year was about 4.6 in assets. And so the total endowment at the foundation is $2.4 billion, which is extraordinary.
You guys have actually some specific goals you're working on. So you have a strategic plan for, you're calling it community well-being. Can you tell us a little bit about those goals?
Absolutely. So one of the main pillars within our strategic plan is we want to reduce the number of children engaged in Manitoba's child and welfare system. So that's about keeping families together to reduce the amount of kids going into care. And on the other side of it, those who are in the system, we want to have better outcomes for those who are aging out. We have over 9,000 children in care in Manitoba. We believe that they deserve the very best of care and the very best opportunities in our province, and we want to focus in on supporting them. One of the other areas that we're focusing in on is improving the well-being of people living within the community area that we call care. Essentially, it is an area where most of the unhoused population of Winnipeg are living. The center of that you would find right beside the Thunderbird House down in Higgins and Maine. And so we have a focused effort on making sure and helping those who live there to have better outcomes and a better life of well-being.
Tell us about some of the charities that Winnipeg Foundation distributed to over the past year, and I'm sure some of them are going to be, aligned with what you've just talked about, some of those goals.
Absolutely. Well, one of them for sure is the Main Street Project Transitional Housing. So the Main Street Project, which is located in the former Mitchell Fabrics building, they're going to be going through a whole redesign and huge capital reinvigoration of their building, adding additional floors, putting investments into expanding their services for care in terms of providing a place for someone to live. And so that support that we are doing there will help that emergency shelter. And they will also add 73 transitional housing units in order to help those who are unhoused. And we're so excited to be able to support that. And we're a 360 grantor. We provide supports from everything from helping the unhoused to arts and culture and wellness. And an example of that is we supported the St. Boniface Hospital mural. And so there is a tunnel at the St. Boniface Hospital that's used to transport patients. And that tunnel sees about 17,000 patients transversing through. And that space was transformed into being a vision of light and enlightenment. And that beautiful mural, which is 300-foot long, supported artists, incredible artists here in Winnipeg, to create an expression of that enlightenment to support through vision and art those patients that are traversing through the tunnel. So there's two examples of how the Winnipeg Foundation really is a 360 grantor, supporting all areas and all causes within our city.
Leave us with the website or the social streams if people are looking to either apply or if they're obviously able to donate.
Absolutely. Please visit WPGFDN.org or just Google the Winnipeg Foundation. That will also come up as well. You'll find all information there about our granting that we do and also to become a donor. And, I have to thank our donors. The definition of philanthropy is to love someone you never met. And we are helping and supporting community and people that we have never met and loving them. And that's what our city needs.
Yeah, that's what our world needs. Thank you very much, Sky. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
That's Sky Bridges, President and CEO of the Winnipeg Foundation.
Ice on the rocks as a dessert.
Yummy.
Made into sculptures. Healing injuries.
Ouch.
A Batman villain.
The Iceman cometh.
Ice, ice, baby.
But our obsession with ice as a product is only 200 years old. How ice transformed our lives on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
Minus 21 in Winnipeg and ice crystals, baby, in the city this morning. It is minus 26 at the airport, so there's a bit of a difference in temperature there. Brandon, similar to Winnipeg, you're cloudy and sitting at minus 20. Well, next, a bit of music on the program. Speaking of the year that was, 2024 was big for Tia Wood. The Cree Salish songwriter reconnected with her musical and cultural roots, and then she put out her debut EP. This is her breakout single. It's called Dirt Roads. Little Atia Woods in her debut EP, her breakout single called Dirt Roads. If you want to check it out, check it out. Well, there is a lovely little wildlife story that we have to share with you yet. And here's the headline. Please don't feed the mooch. That's the urgent message from the Woodlands Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, the mooch is a baby deer that's been showing up daily in a parking lot of the Ontario town of Haliburton. Now, the customers coming out of the grocery store there just keep falling for its adorable doe-eyed face. Monica Melikar is a wildlife custodian with Woodlands Wildlife Sanctuary.
The mooch is a fawn that was born last year. He was with his mom up until probably the late fall, and sadly, she was hit on the road. So now he was orphaned, and he is frequenting the grocery store in Haliburton on a daily basis, and he is, like you said, so darn cute that everybody cannot resist that face and will feed him. The problem with feeding and attracting the deer to town is, first of all, I mean, they could transfer diseases to each other. The other thing is it makes them very tame and complacent and very placid to vehicle traffic, to people. And when these deer are not afraid of vehicles or not afraid of people, they get hurt a lot. And the other thing is, too, a lot of people in this area feed corn, and people think, oh, corn is a great food. It's not too expensive, and it's it's a high energy food. But the problem with corn is very nutritionally insufficient for the deer at this time. It's a very high burning food. In other words, they have to use a lot of energy to actually process the corn, and it also can cause a lot of problems like what's called Aladdin's slipper, where the hooves overgrow and become curled, and the deer cannot properly wear them down, and their coats become very wiry, and that's just because of the lack of nutrients. These deer are literally pigging out on corn, and they love it, don't get me wrong, but it is just not nutritionally balanced for them. A better food than just corn at this time of year would be mixed with rolled oats or another type of grain that will actually give them a better gut balance. So if the deer become habituated, which they are, but if they become a real problem, people need to scare them off. What I recommend is saying something along the lines of like whoosh, whoosh, holding your arms up in the air, waving them, stomping your feet, clapping your hands, and doing that very quickly to actually startle the deer, and then approaching them very quickly, like in a kind of like a jump towards them to scare them. The more the deer are scared of people or afraid of people, the better for them.
It's hard to remember that, right? Because they look so gentle and they're so cute. Everyone's been feeding the mooch. Monica Melikar, the owner of Woodlands Wildlife Sanctuary in Ontario, Haliburton, Ontario. It's interesting. On my way to work, I passed through the River Heights neighborhood, and there's a bird feeder on one of the front lawns, on one of those shepherd's hooks, right? That has the food hanging down. And on many mornings, especially when it's milder out in the fall and in the spring, I'll see deer, just like sometimes 3 deer standing around that feeder and just eating from it. So there's so many of them all over the city of Winnipeg. Good reminders. Business news, by the way, coming up. That's after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's minus 21 downtown, minus 26 out at the airport. And this might be a good sign. The normal highs are starting to warm up just slightly from minus 13, where we've been stuck as a normal for the last month or so, now at minus 12. Today's high still cooler than normal, a high of minus 15. Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to major mining, energy, and forestry projects. That's according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. CBC's Bartley Kivas has details.
According to Natural Resources Canada, Manitoba has $1.7 billion worth of major mining and energy projects on the way. Only tiny Prince Edward Island has fewer dollars devoted to construction in these sectors. Robert Parsons, who teaches sustainability economics at the U of M, says a federal inventory misses some projects.
We're being dissed a little bit. Now, I think it is not a damnation type report for us, but it is cautionary.
John Morris, who co-directs Manitoba's Mining Association, says the survey undervalued a pair of gold mines planned for Lynn Lake. He says Alamos Gold plans to spend $1 billion on this project.
That'll definitely have a big impact here in Manitoba.
The survey also notes 14 major projects were cancelled in Manitoba over the past year. Interim PC leader Wayne Owasco says this shows the NDP government has no economic development plan. Natural Resources Minister Jamie Moses says it was the PCs who dithered on mining and energy. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg mother wants to know how fluid from an IV ended up in her 2-year-old's arm tissue, causing swelling, skin tearing, and first-degree burns. Trilina Francois says she took her son Logan to Children's Emergency at HSC last week because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. He was admitted and given intravenous antibiotics. She says it took the nurses 3 times before they could find a vein to insert the IV. Afterwards, Francois says Logan kept waking up crying, and by morning, she saw his painful, swollen, and blistered arm.
I want the nurses that did it responsible for it, because who knows what it could have. They can do it to another kid. They can do it to anybody else.
Francois says when the nurses removed the IV tape, his skin peeled off. She says she's disappointed with her child's care and plans to hire a lawyer. Shared Health says it has apologized and is investigating. Almost 3 dozen people who live at the Manwin Hotel have been ordered out after city inspectors found safety deficiencies. The owner says more than half of the tenants who initially complied with the order are back with nowhere else to go. Marion Willis at St. Boniface Street Links visited the hotel yesterday, speaking to those living there. She says more work on the building needs to be done, but forcing people out, she says, is not a solution.
You don't fix one life safety issue by creating another. There's all kinds of life safety issues attached to putting people outside. Where do you think these folks are going?
The Manwin's owner has appealed the order and will be in court in February. The city says the order was a necessary step to encourage him to make repairs. A downtown agency has made a pitch to the city to restore the space for vulnerable people at Millennium Library. The city cut funding for the Community Connections Hub last month. The lobby space was staffed with library and crisis workers who connected patrons to social services. Now the Downtown Community Safety Partnership is offering to step in. Gary Burnett is executive director. He says the organization already works with other agencies to help vulnerable Winnipeggers.
I hope it proves successful. I hope it's a good indication to the city and others. And again, working with partners in the community as best we can, that we're providing services collaboratively, coordinated, and all communicating together.
Burnett says his group is willing to take over the space in April and assess its effectiveness after 2 months. A project to create an ecological corridor along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Assiniboine West Watershed District declined a federal grant to fund the project, saying it drew extreme opposition from local governments and landowners. Former MLA John Gerard advocated for the corridor.
There was a lot of, sadly, misinformation, and it may be that it was the fault of Parks Canada, or maybe me or the Assiniboine West Watershed District didn't do as good a job as we should have done in explaining.
The corridor would have created a green belt along the river from Riding Mountain National Park to the Assiniboine. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation says landowners worried the corridor might restrict their ability to farm, fish, and hunt. Any would-be candidates looking to enter the Liberal leadership race have until 5 Eastern Time this afternoon to formally submit their nomination packages. The package must include 300 signatures and a $50,000 deposit. For those interested in voting for a new leader, they have until next Monday to officially register with the Liberal Party. You can hear more national and international news on World Report at 7. Well, it was a beautiful shot.
Neil Pionk for the win. Shoots, scores! Pionk with a ripper. It took 17 seconds and the Jets win this in overtime.
Neil Pionk on TSN. As you heard there, overtime had barely begun, and the Jets take a 3-2 win from the Colorado Avalanche, a bounce-back win after losing 2 in a row. For his part, Pionk jokes geography might have helped.
Puck must go a little faster in the altitude. I don't know what it is. Yeah, no, just made a good shot.
Next up, it's a rematch with the Utah Hockey Club, hoping for a win this time, or Winnipeg, here at home tomorrow night. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the regional forecast now on CBC with Abby Adiemi.
Windy across the province, increasing cloud cover will come in. Then we'll see some clear skies in some areas in the afternoon. The wind chill is going to make you feel colder in some of the regions. For Winnipeg, minus 21 at this time. Clear skies we're seeing ice crystals at the airport. Cloud cover will increase as we get into the morning, but it will clear towards the late afternoon period. Expect a high around minus 15. The wind chill this morning makes it feel colder. It actually feels like minus 33 outside. Similar conditions we're seeing in Morden. We're seeing temperatures around a minus 20. Clear conditions we're seeing heading west to Brandon, minus 21 at this time. Partly cloudy skies we're seeing that should get to minus 12 later in the day. The winds will make it feel like minus 33 this morning. In Dauphin and the Parkland region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 16. Cloudy though. Expect a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast. The clouds and then some breezy conditions developing as you get into the day. High will be around minus 10. Wind chill this morning, minus 32. In the Interlake region, we're seeing minus 22 around Gimli and the surrounding areas. Clear skies you have for now. Some clouds will roll in later, but that will clear in the afternoon. Expect a high of minus 14. Wind chill minus 34 this morning. In the Palm Flin Flon, we're seeing temperatures around minus 16. Light snow already falling there. The high would get to minus 7, though the wind chill makes it feel like minus 25 this morning. That should ease as you get into the afternoon. And then in the northern part, we're seeing Thompson sitting at minus 17 with light snow falling at this time. A high of minus 13. The wind chill this morning feels like minus 26. It should improve as you get closer to the afternoon period. Meanwhile, in Churchill, temperatures around minus 19 at this time. Ice crystals being spotted there. Cloudy skies just seen. Expect a high of minus 13. So overall, the weather across the province is cold and breezy. And for Winnipeg, we have these clear skies and ice crystals. And we should be seeing our temperatures, get to minus 15. So I'll take the minus 15 today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into what's going on the commute today with Corey.
Yeah, usually by now I've gotten like 5 or 6 calls on the commuter line. So I was actually checking to see, is this thing plugged in? Because there hasn't been any so far. So let's knock on wood that it means we're in for a fairly smooth commute. But if it's not a smooth commute for you, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, we'll take it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Business News is next on CBC's Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa. Phil DeMont is filling in for Crystal Lee Ramlicam this morning. Good morning, Phil.
Morning, Marcy.
So Amazon says it's shutting all of its warehouses in Quebec. Is this because of the union or is this a business decision?
I don't like to jump on the easy answer, but it's hard to see how this is not a reaction to the unionization at the Amazon facility in Laval, Quebec. So this week, Amazon said it's closing its 7 warehouses in that province, cutting 1,700 workers. Instead, it'll go back to the old delivery system, which is using local delivery companies to send packages around Quebec. Amazon didn't really, to be honest, have a great explanation about why it was going back to a delivery system that had a dump just 6 years ago. They spent a lot of money starting in 2019 to open facilities in Quebec. The union problems first really appeared last April. That's when CSN, it's a Quebec union, filed an application to have the Laval warehouse unionized. So that filing was okayed in May, so you're unionized. Laval, second Amazon operation in North America to get a union. Warehouse on Long Island was the first. Now, the company does have a history of aggressively pushing back against collective bargaining drives wherever they come up. So, for instance, in August, a Quebec tribunal told the company to stop interfering with union activities at Laval. In September, Unifor filed a grievance against Amazon when the union was trying to organize a BC warehouse. And last November, the U.S. Labor Board took Amazon to task for threats, implicit threats, made against union members on Long Island. the company looks to be preventing what's happened at Starbucks, another company that's aggressively pushed against collectivization or collective bargaining. In 2021, workers at a Starbucks in Buffalo voted to unionize. It was the first store to do that. So 4 years later, this January, workers at more than 300 Starbucks walked off the job on strike. And I think that's what Amazon's looking at, and they're saying, not in my house.
Well, we'll see what develops in Winnipeg. Of course, we have 2 warehouses here, distribution centers. The one on Regent is the newer one in Transcona.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about Mark Carney, who's a front runner in the race to replace Justin Trudeau as the head of the Liberal Party. A lot of people are asking, though, can a central banker make a good politician?
Yeah, on the surface, you'd say no. As public people, they actually have cool nicknames. Steady Eddie was Sir Edward George's nickname in the UK. He was the head of the central bank there. Helicopter Ben was Ben Bernanke when he headed up the U.S. Federal Reserve. George was the UK central banker. But on the surface, you'd say no, because central bankers are not boring as people, but they appeal to a different audience. So whether you're talking to Jerome Powell in the US, Andrew Bailey, who's now at the UK, Tiff Macklin in Canada, your job is to be boring. Because you're often talking to bankers, investment people, company executives. They don't like flash. Unpredictability scares them. Now, Marcy, it wasn't this way. In the 60s and 70s, central bankers didn't say much at all. For, at the time, economic reasons. There was a theory behind it. That changed. So now transparency is important. But when they talk with a ton of economic jargon and tongue-twisting alliterations. You have to really puzzle where the commas are in half the communiques to figure out what they're talking about. And that's what Carney's up against. He was the head of the Bank of Canada, head of the Bank of England, head of a prominent United Nations economic group. None of that screams excitement. Now he has to connect with voters, and I think that was the reason for his appearance, slightly surprise appearance on The Daily Show. But it's hard to change what you've done for a number of years. Carney's one advantage is he used to be in the private sector as head of a big fund there, or investment company. That was much more of a public-faced job where you had to kind of do, stuff in the community and that. So he's at least got some history. But generally, central bankers, because they're taught to be boring, they kind of are.
Interesting perspective. And to another story here before we look at the markets this morning, sometimes you can see odd collaborations between celebrities and companies on consumer products. And I understand that Post Malone's the latest. What's he pushing?
Oreos. The ultra-tattooed rapper has designed a limited edition Oreo flavor.
Is it tattooed?
No.
Oh,
that's
I thought it would be
It's
stamped. I thought the cookie would be stamped. That would have been smart.
Well, yeah, but no, it's just a salted caramel swirl with shortbread flavoring mixed in. Yeah, it's got a black and a golden cookie, so it's kind of two-colored. I think that's the tattoo part. Oreo sometimes does these partnerships. In 2020, they did one with Lady Gaga, pink-filled cookies. That was a big hit, actually. So here's some of the odder ones, mainly musicians. Crocs has a couple, Post Malone again, and country singer Luke Combs. The Grateful Dead teamed up with the Care Bears, of course, as designs on Igloo portable drinks coolers. At one point, you could buy a Dolce & Gabbana kitchen appliances like toasters or blenders. John Mayer, you'd think of him when you think of Way Out laundry detergent, but he pushes that. The weirdest one I found, not a musician, but in 2020, Ben & Jerry's teamed up with Nike to create the Chunky Dunky sneaker. It's a sneaker with the chunky monkey pattern from the Ben & Jerry's container, on the sneaker. It looks like you're wearing a balloon. And I can't see you'd want to be throwing down on a court with these. It wouldn't make you look as the toughest guy on the court. On the other hand, to be honest, Marcia, I've never understood the appeal of Crocs, so I might be just too old for this world.
When Crocs became popular, we did interviews on the show, like interviews about why are they popular, why are they not, do they have any grip? Remember how crazy people went for them? Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. And I get that they're comfortable, but it's like wearing a pink box.
I'm not even going to dig into that analogy because I don't get it. But what are the markets looking like this morning?
Well, they look like boxes on your feet. Europe, not much going on. Germany, France up a bit. UK down marginally. Action in Asia, though. Beijing pushing investment pros over there to buy stocks. So Shanghai, the domestic market, more or less up 0.5%. Hong Kong, the international market for China, down about the same amount. Oil up 30 cents, $75.74 a barrel. And the Canadian dollar down almost a fifth of a cent, trading at 69.41 cents U.S.
All right. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Phil DeMont with our business news. Well, we have had kind of a fun week playing covers. Winnipeg groups that are doing covers of really famous songs. We had a great one yesterday, and we have another one coming up next on CBC here. I'll just dip into weather briefly. Ice crystals, -21. That's Winnipeg. Cloudy and Brandon, -20. Thompson, light snow, -17. The cover this morning comes from the Brothers Landreth. This is their version of Bird on a Wire.
Like a bird on a wire, like a drunk in some midnight choir, I have tried in my own ways to be free. Like a worm on a hook, like some night in an old-fashioned book, I have saved all my ribbons for thee. And if I have been unkind, I hope that you can let it go by. And if I have been untrue, I hope you know it wasn't ever for you. Like a baby stillborn, like a beast in his horn, I have torn everyone who's reached out for me. And I swear by this song and all that I have done wrong, I will make it all up to thee. I saw a beggar leaning on his wooden crutch. He said to me, you must not ask for so much. And a pretty woman leaning in her darkened door said, hey, why not ask just a little more? And if I have been unkind, I hope that you can just let it go on by. And if I have been untrue, I hope you know it was never for you.
How beautiful is that? You might be feeling like it's Sunday morning right now. It is, in fact, Thursday morning on Information Radio. Listening in to the Brothers Landreth and their cover of Leonard Cohen's Bird on a Wire. If you want to find this, this was recorded live off the floor on their brand new EP that just came out at the end of last year. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Next on the show, let's turn to something very different, our medical column today. There's some new research about concussions, suspected concussions, and now some doctors in the U.S. are proposing a new indicator that might help with diagnosis. Here's what we learned about it from our house doctor and columnist, Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning, Marcy.
So I suppose just so we have a baseline here before we get into the study, can you explain to people what exactly a concussion is?
Yeah, for sure. A concussion is a kind of temporary brain injury. Happens when your brain gets jolted or shaken around in your skull. But a concussion doesn't have to happen from a blow to the head directly. So think of when a player is playing hockey, and they get a clean body check, right? Their head sometimes shakes pretty violently, but they didn't hit their head. But they can still suffer a concussion from that. So when your brain gets jolted or shaken enough, then that can cause temporary problems. It makes you feel groggy, disoriented, maybe even just for a few seconds. It can make you confused. That's the concussion. You do not need to get knocked out or lose consciousness to have suffered a concussion. But if you're knocked out, that's a sign of a worse concussion, usually, right? So this concussion, you kind of go, ooh, I got my bell rung. Or people say, oh, I saw stars, like in the old-timey movies, or in the cartoons. But that is it. And it can affect your memory, your balance, your coordination, even your concentration. It can give you a headache. It can make you feel nauseous. It can make you sensitive to light and noise. But that's it. When you get your bell rung, or you get hit, or you fall, and that shook the cobwebs loose in my brain. That's the concussion.
Tell us about this study, this paper, then, and the head shake that I was referring to.
Yeah, so researchers at Mass General Brigham and the Concussion Legacy Foundation in the U.S., they published a study in a journal called Diagnostics back in October. They looked for what they called a spontaneous head shake after a kinematic event, which if you look at the first letter of each word there, it actually spells shake. Clever. Yeah, so they surveyed almost 350 athletes, and they asked them, hey, do you remember getting hit and then making that head shake type movement? And they also asked them, hey, when if you made that movement, why? Why did you shake your head? The top three answers were because they felt confused or disoriented, or they felt dizzy, or because they felt like they just needed to jumpstart their brain. So when they crunched the numbers, they found that if athletes reported that head shake, that there was between a 72 and 92% chance that the athlete also reported, yep, that one gave me a concussion. That hit gave me a concussion. And if they reported that, oh yeah, I got hit, but I didn't shake my head, then for football players at least, there was only a 0.05% chance that the athlete would report feeling concussed. So the idea is that that head shake, it's easy to identify it. You can see it from the stands. You can see it on TV. And if we see anyone do that after they fall or after they get hit playing sports or whatever, it's a pretty decent clue that they might have suffered a concussion. And in sports, that would trigger the safest course of action, which is, if in doubt, sit them out, right? Take them out of the play until they're assessed and cleared. Now, obviously, it's not the only thing we would use to diagnose a concussion, but it might be a pretty good clue.
What else do you use to diagnose a concussion?
Yeah, so there aren't any blood tests. And, people always say, well, do I need a CT or should I get an MRI? Those aren't helpful in diagnosing concussion. It's all about the story and about the physical exam. So in terms of the story, we want to know what happened. First of all, how did you feel? Did you feel out of sorts even for a few seconds? Did you feel that kind of confused or you were disoriented, things like that? Did you lose consciousness? And if so, can somebody tell you for how long? It's super helpful to have witnesses or a bystander or something in the case of a car crash or something like that. I've seen patients who got hit playing football, for example, and they don't remember exactly what happened, but their parent was videotaping the play. And so I can see what happened. That's super helpful. Sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, I got hit, playing hockey or whatever. And the next thing I really remember clearly is being at home. But I don't remember going and getting out of my equipment and driving home and all that stuff. So we want a really good story. The other thing is we want a really good physical exam, including a neurological exam. So checking things like balance, coordination, speed of movement, things like that. There are some standardized tests that people can do that the physios and stuff often do. There's one all about balance, and there's another really comprehensive one called the Sport Concussion Assessment Tool, which another acronym, SCAT, It's called actually the SCAT-5 because it's on the 5th edition. So the Sport Concussion Assessment Tool that's available actually online, and you can look it up if you're interested. But that's the kind of thing we do. And some higher level athletes actually get brain tests like the SCAT done at the start of the season, so that if they do suffer a concussion, there's a benchmark, a baseline that team doctors or physios can compare to, as you know, to see how bad the concussion was, or to see how well they're recovering and getting back to their baseline.
Once a person's diagnosed with a concussion, then how is it treated? And as you mentioned, I mean, there's been advances, right? So what does that look like now?
Yeah, so there's two big things I think that are still out there on the internet, especially because stuff on the internet doesn't get updated, right? So the two things that have changed a lot, one is that we used to say that you can't sleep. It's like, oh, you got hit in the head, don't fall asleep. And you see this in movies and TV shows. It's like, stay with me, you know, slapping the person on the... You don't need to do that. People can sleep if they want. Sleep is good for your brain. It's important to get them checked out, of course. And then the other thing we used to say is that you have to have complete rest until you're symptom-free. You know, rest your brain until you're symptom-free. And that causes a lot of stress for people. Because, you know, if you can't work, or if you can't take care of kids, you can't, you know, go to school if you're a kid, and you end up getting really stressed about missing a few weeks, you know, because it might take a few weeks to fully recover. And we know that complete rest can actually prolong the recovery now. So what we're saying is like, look, rest, both physical and mental rest for the first 24 to 48 hours is really important. But then a person can start on some light activity like walking or light exercise, and then ramp up slowly and gradually as long as it doesn't trigger worsening symptoms. And so that's sort of where we're at. Unfortunately, there's no medications that help, you know, fix a concussion. But, you know, there are, of course, medications to help with headaches or muscle strains or whatever that might go along with the concussion, like plain old Tylenol and stuff like that. But like I said, there's lots of outdated info online. So if you do want some good, up-to-date Canadian sources of information, there's a website called parachute.ca. It's a great website for sort of general injury type stuff and prevention, but they've got a really good source on concussions as well. They don't have the head shake stuff on there yet, but that's I'm sure coming, because they do keep their website pretty updated at parachute.ca.
All right, Dr. Bardwash, thank you.
My pleasure.
That's our medical column. Let's turn to Heather Wells for our headlines.
Almost 36 people who live at the Manwin Hotel have been ordered out after city inspectors found safety deficiencies. The owner says more than half the tenants who initially complied are now back with nowhere else to go. Marion Willis at St. Boniface Street Link says more work does need to be done on that building, but forcing people out is not a solution. Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to major mining and energy projects. That's according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. We'll hear some details in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We're also going to have a highlight on that story in the next hour of Information Radio. In addition, are you paying high cost at your vet? If so, is there any correlation between who owns your vet and those costs? A Marketplace did an investigation, and they did look at the owners of Winnipeg vets as part of this. So we're going to hear all about that and how all those things fit together. Stay tuned. Charles the Agro will be talking with us in the next hour. Right now in Winnipeg, it's minus 21, our high minus 15 today. And take it easy. Could be slick out there, but we have yet to have any major reports of problems on your commute. 788-3093 if you do need to add something. World Report's next.
On the Current.
I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together and you have to send them all back.
Undocumented migrants in the United States are on edge as Donald Trump launches his plan to deport millions of people. Migrant support groups are fighting back. Others argue, though, these raids are necessary. That story coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
There are just hours left for candidates to enter the Liberal leadership race. They have until 5 p.m. Eastern to submit their nomination package. It must include a $50,000 deposit and 300 signatures of support. That support is crucial for anyone who wants to be the next Prime Minister. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau, and Janice, CBCNews.ca is where we are tracking who's in the race and who is endorsing them. What do these endorsements tell us about the campaign strategy?
It's not just the names you line up, it's whether these higher profile Liberals also bring with them a team that helps you win. Radio-Canada is reporting that this weekend, François-Philippe Champagne is going to throw his formidable and formidable networking skills behind Mark Carney. That, on top of Melanie Joly's earlier support, is huge, especially in Quebec, where Liberals have to hold their ground. And if you look at some of the other junior cabinet ministers and MPs that are in Carney's camp, they are some of the best fundraisers and organizers, particularly in the Greater Toronto Area and BC's Lower Mainland. And that, too, is fundamental. But remember, because of this party's national point system, where ridings are weighted equally, whether they're currently held by Liberals or not, it's just as important for candidates to sign up supporters in places like Western Canada. And these endorsement lists don't really tell us how that ground game might be going.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Los Angeles area crews are battling 2 more major fires. The latest is a large brush fire near the ritzy Bel Air neighborhood. It broke out late last night. Steve Futterman is there. And Steve, describe what you're seeing.
Well, Marcia, things are looking good right now. The flames have really been tampered down by these wonderful helicopter water drops. This fire, as you mentioned, broke out late last night in the Sepulveda Pass. Now, that is near this very famous area of Bel Air, which includes hundreds of multi-million-dollar homes. And early on, there was real fear that this fire could spread quickly. But this morning, fire crews have pretty much stopped it from spreading. Now, the first of the fires yesterday, the Hughes fire, began in the morning north of LA, and that did spread quickly. Within a couple of hours, it had burned more than 20 square kilometers. Flames were rapidly moving towards residential areas. This woman, Hilda Torres, was going door to door, urging people to evacuate.
I'll tell them to please just leave the area because the fire is coming very aggressively, especially with the high winds.
The big break came when help arrived in the form of water drops from helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. The fire is still burning, but mostly in wilderness areas, and homes are no longer in imminent danger.
How is Los Angeles dealing with all of this?
Well, not always that well. It's been quite an intense 2 weeks, and the Santa Ana winds are again expected to increase a bit today. I actually found a woman last night near the Bel Air area who's had to leave her home for a second time.
It's hard to get back to normal. We don't even know what normal is anymore. So it's, we're just always on edge.
Now, there is actually some rain in the forecast, not much, but it's due this weekend, and this city cannot wait to see any water, any amount of water come from the skies.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Marcia.
Freelance reporter Steve Futterman near Bel Air in Los Angeles. The World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland wraps up this week. The head of the World Trade Organization had a word of advice for participants. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was on a panel discussing trade and Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on trading partners, including Canada.
Please, let's not hyperventilate. I know we're here to discuss tariffs. I've been saying to everybody, could we chill? Because 80% of world trade right now is taking place on WTO terms. So there's resilience. Does that mean I'm not concerned about No, I'm not trying to say that. But I just sense a lot of hyperventilation, and we need to take a deep breath.
Some participants suggested Trump's call for a 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico is only a ploy for leverage in trade talks. Trump will speak remotely at the annual gathering of business and political leaders in Davos later today. Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories is coming together as a community, marking 1 year since 6 people were killed in a plane crash. The flight was en route to the Diavik diamond mine, and there was only one survivor. Carla Ulrich has more on how people in the community are reflecting on that day.
I think that our community comes together really well when tragedy strikes, and this was a big tragedy for our community.
Dana Ferguson is the mayor of Fort Smith. She remembers January 23, 2024 as solemn, when news of the plane crash tore through the community. Residents and families are still grieving, but she says Fort Smith is known for pulling together when it counts.
We do hold each other up very well. We do support each other very well, and we are an empathetic, compassionate community.
Tonight, the town is honoring the lives lost with a candlelight memorial. Ferguson says they will ring the church bells for 6 minutes to honor the 6 lives lost.
Joel is somebody that just made everything okay. You're having a bad day, like he helped make it okay.
Bev Chapelski's husband of 20 years, Joel Tetzo, was one of the victims. She says this past year has been full of profound loss for her and their 3 children.
My kids know with everything that their dad loved and adored them. And Joel also left knowing he was loved and appreciated.
Chapelski says they talk about their father every day. Community support, she says, has been overwhelming. It's been an incredibly healing experience. And for that, Chapelski says she is forever grateful. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Fort Smith, Northwest Territories.
A British teenager convicted of killing 3 young girls will be sentenced later this morning. The stabbings happened during a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. The case led to countrywide rioting after the attacker was falsely identified as an asylum seeker. Earlier this week, the UK government said it will launch an inquiry into the case. The teen pleaded guilty on Monday to 3 counts of murder and 10 charges of attempted murder relating to the attack. In Thailand, more than 1,000 LGBTQ plus couples are getting married today. A couple walks along a rainbow-colored carpet as they prepare to wed in Bangkok. Thailand's same-sex marriage law comes into effect today. It gives them the same rights as heterosexual couples, including adoption and inheritance rights. The change comes after decades of campaigning by activists. Thailand is only the 3rd jurisdiction in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. Taiwan and Nepal are the others. If you feel the cost of caring for your pet has gone up, it's not something you're imagining. The medical fees for pets in Canada are getting more expensive. A joint investigation by the Fifth Estate, Marketplace, and Radio-Canada's Enquête and La Facture takes a closer look at who is behind your pet's veterinary care. Chelsea Agro has more.
Yeah. Aww. When Guppy the cat stopped eating, Ona Meyer-Terzic rushed him to the vet. She agreed to a few $100s in blood work and was shocked when she got a bill for $1,100. I can't pay for that right now. She was also shocked to learn the clinic had been bought up by a corporation. But the takeover trend is sweeping the country. 20% of all vet clinics and half of emergency and specialty hospitals are now owned by big international corporations. But not all of them are branded. BCA does brand its clinics, while Vet Strategy does not, which means pet owners might not realize they're visiting a corporately owned chain.
I think they're hiding it.
Insiders like Rima, whose name we've changed to protect her identity, worked at both corporations and at a Vet Strategy clinic.
At my hospital, we had 5 service fee increases within 1 year.
Both VCA and Vet Strategy tell us their vets are free to provide the care that best suits an animal's needs and an owner's financial position. Vet Strategy didn't address its prices, but did say, like all industries, its prices have risen rapidly in recent years. They also say information about the practices they own is available on their website. Information Terzic would like to have had before she walked in the door. Chelsea Agro, CBC News, Toronto.
Hold your cards close, know when to fold.
You are listening to music from the last Showgirl soundtrack. The film stars Pamela Anderson in the role of an aging Las Vegas performer. The BC-born actress has already scored SAG and Golden Globe nominations for her performance. And later this morning, we will find out if she's also getting an Oscar nod. The nominations for the 2025 Academy Awards will be announced in about half an hour. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Summer would go.
Ooh, I want to see that one for sure. It is 7:10 a.m., everyone. Good morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us and making time for us on your Thursday here on Information Radio on CBC. This is your morning show, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and maybe you're watching on YouTube. Weather, traffic in a moment. Also, more on what you just heard about Marketplace and their investigation into veterinary costs. We'll hear more from Charles the Agro, including some localized stats for veterinarian offices and businesses here in Winnipeg. So stay tuned for that interview. Also, this hour on the program, a Winnipeg mother says nurses should have been more careful, in her view, with the insertion of her 2-year-old son's IV. We're going to hear more about what happened. And Bartley Kivas is going to be in studio. A federal inventory of major mining and energy projects places Manitoba second last among provinces in terms of the dollars devoted to the project. So Bartley's going to look at the implications and the list. He'll be here just ahead of 8 o'clock. For other developing news stories in Manitoba this morning, Heather Wells joins us now live from our news center.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg mother does want to know how fluid from an IV ended up in her 2-year-old's arm tissue, causing swelling, skin tearing, and first-degree burns. Trilena Francois says she took her son to the children's emergency at HSC last week because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. We'll hear what happened next, but we will tell you that she says she's disappointed and plans to hire a lawyer. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation says confusion and extreme opposition doomed a proposed ecological corridor in western Manitoba. The federally funded project along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Wildlife Federation's Rob Olson says landowners worried the corridor might restrict their ability to farm, fish, and hunt. More Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And now, let's get into our forecast for today. Abby Adiemi has your details. Hello.
Yeah, cold and breezy day across board, though it's going to feel much colder with a wind chill factored in from Winnipeg all the way to the northern part of the province. We should see varying conditions, light snow in the north, clear skies down south. Winnipeg at this time we are at minus 19, sports and ice crystals at the airport. Cloud cover will roll in this morning. The skies will clear again as we get late into the afternoon. It will feel breezy at some point. We'll see a highs around minus 15. As mentioned earlier, the wind chill this morning will be feeling like minus 33 for folks in Winnipeg. And then tomorrow we should expect snow throughout the day, about 2 centimeters expected. Looking at the south central region, we're going to see cold, breezy weather with wind chills making it feel colder. And then the Parkland region will be seeing similar conditions with colder temperatures to the west. The northwest stays cold with snow and fast-paced winds, particularly in Thompson and Churchill. Overall, it's going to be cold and breezy across board. Right now, Winnipeg, minus 19, clouds rolls in, and we'll see some sunshine later in the day. The high, minus 15.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the commute.
Yeah, westbound Springfield between Rothesay and Henderson got a call from Vic that there's a bunch of fire trucks, about 6 or so, he reckons, blocking that westbound lane entirely. That's westbound Springfield between Rothesay and Henderson. That's the only major issue out there that I've heard of so far. But you can give me a call if you do see something. I'm also opening up the line today because weather's about to get nice, and I do want to hear how the trails are looking. I know the Forks now is open all the way from the Forks to Hugo Docks, the river trail.
Fun.
So if you have any other updates on conditions there or ski trails, anything like that, give us a call on the CBC Commuter /trail line because it's almost the weekend. Weather's starting to look much, much better. 204-788-3093.
Just want to flag that we're going to hear new music this half hour on the show because they found a track that was believed lost from Tina Turner from her Private Dancer album. So you might have heard that a bit in national news, just playing a piece of it, but we're going to play the whole track for you, so stay tuned for that. Right now, though, let's return to the investigation from Marketplace. If you have noticed, the cost of caring for your pet has been climbing. As you heard, you are not alone. This week, though, Marketplace is taking a closer look at what could be driving up the cost of vet care across the country. This is host Charles the Agro's special report.
Hi.
So tell us what's happening just overall with vet clinics across the country.
Well, an increasing number of them are actually owned by corporations. So before about 2010 or so, most of the clinics in Canada were probably owned by the vet you were actually visiting or someone, say, who worked in the clinic. But today, more than 700 clinics in this country, they're actually owned by 6 international conglomerations. Now, the 3 biggest operating in Canada, they are Vet Strategy, VCA, and NVA. But the trouble is, not all of these corporations are actually branding their clinics. NVA and Vet Strategy don't. So consumers who are visiting that clinic with their pet, they might not know that there's actually a corporation behind their pet's care. Now, we've spoken with a number of industry insiders who say there's a lot of pressure at these clinics to increase profits, drive revenue. Insiders that include Rima. We have changed her name to protect her identity. She worked at 2 of those big corporations, VCA and Vet Strategy, for years.
There are certain things that I found were driven more based on commission, sales, and not necessarily what's going to be best for the pet or the family, but what's going to be best for bottom dollar.
So, yeah, things like 5 price increases in a year. 5.
I don't even want to ask you why this matters, because 5 prices increases in a year answers that. Yeah. But what else do you think the consumers should understand about this, or that people should know?
Well, this is really costing Canadians, right? This is a problem because it's just becoming incredibly expensive to care for your pet. Rima also told us, and other insiders talked about these pricing practices, systemic price increases that we mentioned, those prices going up by between 3 and 6% each time, staff not being given reasons for the hike, again, just to drive up the revenue. So what is all this doing? Well, Dr. Ivan Zak, a Moncton-based veterinarian, he says when corporations increase their prices, that in turn drives up prices all across the industry and across the country.
The danger there is that everybody starts comparing to the clinic that is owned by a corporation that says, okay, well, we can go that high.
Do you worry that as these prices keep going up, that people won't be able to afford care for their pets?
I think it's happening now.
So in Winnipeg, for example, there are 22 vet clinics in Winnipeg alone. Half of those 22 are owned by Vet Strategy.
Really? And as you said, people may not even know.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do the companies have to say about what you discovered?
Well, both VCA and Vet Strategy tell us their vets are free to provide the care that best suits an animal's needs and an owner's financial position. Vet Strategy didn't address its prices specifically, but they did tell us that, like all industries, operating costs, they've gone up a lot in recent years due to a number of factors. They also say they're committed to transparency. So when they do take over a clinic, they say they announce that on their website. NVA tells us they don't change the name of a clinic when they buy it up to respect the legacy that was built by the veterinarian.
Is there anything that's being done, given that there's concerns, to slow the takeover trend?
So in the U.S., yes. Federal regulators there have actually taken some action, but the same can't be said of here in Canada. So the competition so far hasn't taken any action to prevent corporate consolidation in Canada's vet industry. They did tell us, though, they're monitoring the sector.
I wonder if you have advice for pet owners who are listening and right away kind of want to know, who owns the clinic, who's behind their clinic.
Yeah, so the first thing people can do is next time you go, ask. We certainly did that in our hidden camera investigation, but as you'll see, you might not always get a straight answer. The other thing that we've done, Marketplace has tried to take the guesswork out of this for consumers. So if you go to CBC News, go to the website, we've created a tool. You can type your clinic name in the search function there, and then we'll search the publicly available data for you. So if your clinic is owned by one of those big 3, you'll be able to find out.
Thanks very much for this. Lots for people to, follow up on, and lots more to hear in your investigation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So that's my conversation yesterday, which we recorded via Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube, I have not done a quick wardrobe change. I'm actually live. That's Charles the Agro with Marketplace, hosts there. Their full investigation, Cause for the Pause, the rising cost of pet care, airs tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on CBC Television and on CBC Gem. And check out that tool she mentioned online.
The cold of winter melted by an array of floral artistry to warm your soul. Fleur de Ville Artiste comes to the Leaf at Assiniboine Park January 16th to 26th. Be dazzled by figurines decorated in flowery fashions, designed by Manitoba's vibrant art scene and blossoming floral talent. Fleur de Ville Artiste, proudly sponsored by CBC. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Time right now, 7:21. It is Thursday morning, and it is lightly snowing in Winnipeg, and our temperature is right around minus 19. I just updated our temperatures here. Minus 19 downtown, minus 22 at the Forks. Thanks for joining us. If you have anything to pass along in traffic, you can let us know. It's 788-3093. We do know that there has been one issue. Westbound Springfield between Henderson and Rothesay, there's an issue there. So 788-3093 if you have any updates. Well, there's new music this morning from Tina Turner, the late Tina Turner. Tina Turner played Winnipeg in 1985. We were one of the stops on her famed Private Dancer tour. But this song wasn't played, and that's because it's just been found. That album, Private Dancer, really established Tina Turner as a solo superstar. It sold 12 million copies. This song never made it onto the record because for decades it was believed lost. The tune's called Hot For You Baby. It was played publicly for the very first time earlier this morning on BBC Radio 2, and the track's going to be released officially as a single and included on a new deluxe edition of Private Dancer that will come out in March, coming out this year. But we have it for you, so here is the lost track from the Private Dancer album, Tina Turner in Hot For You Baby.
I've been sitting here for the last few hours, looking at you, stretching my imagination to the point the world can maybe get my hands on you. The way that you've been moving to the music as you dance, sweet sight to see. But I can't take it anymore, that's why I'm out here on the floor. So won't you dance with me? I'm hot for you, baby.
You awake? You might feel like you're at a hardcore, like a rock concert, right? And we hope you do, because no one sings better than Tina Turner for that, right? She was so gritty. She was so talented. She was such a icon for women in rock music. Just so cool that they found that track. So they found that track. It was on the Private Dancer. It was a lost track from the Private Dancer album, her phenomenal album in the 80s. Turner, of course, died in 2023. She was 83 years old. But they're working on releasing an anniversary edition this year of her music. So it's coming out in March, a new deluxe edition of Private Dancer that will come out in March. That's the lost tune, Hot For You Baby. So you heard it here. You didn't hear it here first, though. It came out on BBC Radio 2 early this morning, and that was its full debut. The track's going to be released, by the way, as a single. Next, let's go to Morning Sports. Scott Regere's here. Hi there.
Why was that track a loss? That could have been a hit back in the day. It could be a hit right now. Who knows?
Do you know what? That is exactly what Corey Funk said. You know, Corey directs a show, and he said the exact same thing as you. He's like, that was great, super fun. Yeah. Right?
Like when the Beatles lost tracks, Free as a Bird Now and Then came out. I mean, not the Beatles at their peak, I would argue, but that, as far as Tina Turner goes, is right up there.
I know.
Yeah, I'm with Corey. Absolutely.
Yep, pretty cool. Let's start with hockey, where the Jets are pretty hot, back in the win column.
Yeah, after a loss earlier this week to Utah, Marcy, that head coach Scott Arniel called the most embarrassing of the season. So Winnipeg down the Avalanche in Denver, getting the winner in OT, Neil Pionk. After he streaked down the sideboards, Pionk unleashed a slap shot from the right face-off circle. It was a startlingly similar goal to the one he scored a couple of years ago against the Avalanche, also in overtime, and that fact was not lost on teammate Josh Morrissey.
I mean, we saw a very similar goal here in this building, I think 2 years ago. Neil's going down that wing and taking a slapper far side. So I think a few of us were talking after. When he picked the puck up and had the room, we kind of had flashbacks, and I think he even outdid that last shot with this one. It was a perfect shot. I had a good angle at it, and, huge win.
When asked about it, Pionk chalked it up to the puck traveling faster in the thin air in Colorado. Winnipeg's atop the Western Conference and back in action tomorrow night against Utah.
Tennis now. The finalists in the women's singles are being determined this morning at the Australian Open.
Yeah, they've just been determined, actually. One of them saw Aryna Sabalenka crush her good friend Paula Badosa in straight sets. The two are best buddies, and Sabalenka said after the match, a Melbourne shopping trip is on her if Badosa forgives her for her performance. Sabalenka is going to take on, I was sure it was going to be Poland's Iga Świątek, who's been the hottest player in the game, but she was just upset by American Madison Keys. It was just a great match. Keys has not been in a Grand Slam final in 8 years. She's been waiting an age. So Keys versus Sabalenka on Saturday in the final. In the men's final, we're still waiting to see who will be competing. The semis go tonight. One of them has Jannik Sinner, the world number one, against American Ben Shelton. This is only the second time Shelton's ever gotten this far at a Grand Slam. You'd think he'd be thrilled, Marcy. But he says he's been put off by reporters at the Aussie Open and their lines of questioning.
There's some comments that have been made to me, whether it was today on the court, hey, Ben, how does it feel that no matter who you play in your next match, no one's going to be cheering for you? I just don't think that's respectful from a guy I've never met before in my life. And I feel like broadcasters should be helping us grow our sport and help these athletes who just won matches on the biggest stage enjoy one of their biggest moments. And I feel like there's just been a lot of negativity, and I think that's something that needs to change.
Novak Djokovic would agree. He refused to do interviews earlier this week, Marcy, after a reporter with the tournament's official broadcaster baited him by calling the Serbian great overrated and a has-been. Not sure about that. If Djokovic beats Alex Zverev in tonight's other semifinal, he'll have a chance to win a 25th career major. That's something no one has ever done before.
And what happened to asking questions?
Yeah,
as opposed to putting your thoughts in your question, right?
Yep.
How do you feel competing at this level, having this much experience? And, like that question could get him to answer. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm still in it. But like calling someone a has-been, wow. All right. Boo. Sorry, the journalistic boo from me and Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Let's finish with basketball. A Canadian made history last night, actually, right?
Shea looking for 50, and he delivers.
The sound, Marcy, of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander scoring his 50th point in Oklahoma City's win last night over Utah. He finished with 54, the most a player from Canada has ever scored in an NBA game, surpassing Jamal Murray's 48. Gilgeous-Alexander, now the betting favorite to win the MVP award. He would be the first Canadian to do that, of course, since Steve Nash. Pretty good.
No doubt. All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
That is Morning Sports on CBC with Scott Regehr, and now it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we're starting to climb up. It's minus 19 in downtown Winnipeg. Increasing clouds, then clearing later today. A high of minus 15, snowy and warmer tomorrow. A 2-year-old boy went to a Winnipeg emergency room with a cyst, but left with a painful, swollen and blistered arm after fluid from his IV went into the tissue. Trilina Francois says she got her son Logan to Children's Emergency at HSC on January 16th because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. It took the nurses, she says, 3 times before they were able to find a vein and insert the IV at the center of his arm. Francois says Logan kept waking, crying through the night.
He screamed when I tried to pick him up. And I was like, why is he doing that? Like, I was like wondering what's going on. So I started looking through his whole body and I noticed his arm was like big and inflated.
Francois says when the nurses removed the IV tape, his skin peeled off. She says a surgeon assessed his arm and said he could have lost feeling in it had she not noticed. Francois is now looking for answers and plans to hire a lawyer. Shared Health says it has apologized and is investigating. 34 people living in the Manwin Hotel have been ordered to vacate the premises. The city issued the order earlier this month after inspectors found safety concerns. Akim Kambamba has owned that Main Street hotel for 13 years. He says many of the tenants who initially complied with the order have since returned because they have nowhere else to go.
There's no room anywhere. The shelters are full. They can't find housing anywhere. The landlords with bigger buildings charge way more than they can afford. It's not 100% perfect, but people can live here. And the city should be reasonable not to kick people out in minus 40-degree weather.
The city says the order was a necessary step to encourage the owner to make repairs. Kambamba has appealed, and a hearing is set for February 10th. Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to major mining and energy projects. That is according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. Natural Resources Canada says Manitoba has $1.7 billion worth of major mining and energy projects on the way. Only Prince Edward Island has fewer dollars devoted to construction in these sectors. Robert Parson teaches sustainability economics at the University of Manitoba and says this inventory misses some projects.
We're being dissed a little bit. Now, I think it is not a damnation type report for us, but it is cautionary. I think we have to look at that.
You can hear more on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. The city has a new offer to reopen the space at the Millennium Library for vulnerable people. Funding for the Community Connections Hub was cut last month. It was staffed with library and crisis workers who connected patrons to social services. Now the Downtown Community Safety Partnership is offering to step in. Greg Burnett's organization already works with other agencies to help vulnerable Winnipeggers. Burnett says they would not be at the library to do security.
We're big into, pre-crisis, so we're talking to people beforehand, and we can be preventative in a lot of these things. So we have no intention to take over any type of security protocol or even the space on a whole. We really want to work together with everybody.
Burnett says his group is willing to take over the space in April and assess its effectiveness over 2 months. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation says confusion and extreme opposition doomed a proposed ecological corridor in western Manitoba. The federally funded project along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Wildlife Federation's Rob Olson says landowners felt they weren't sufficiently consulted and worried the corridor might restrict their ability to farm, fish, and hunt.
It was really kind of an awful process and a terrible outcome because people in the local community were kind of pitted against each other and they were embattled and concerned and mad and upset.
The Little Saskatchewan River Project would have created a belt of green space along the river from Riding Mountain National Park to the Assiniboine River. U.S. President Donald Trump suggests he is open to seeking revenge against his predecessor. In his last act as president, Joe Biden granted preemptive pardons to members of his family, lawmakers, and some public servants. But last night on Fox News, Donald Trump questioned why Biden didn't grant himself a pardon.
And you know, the funny thing, maybe the sad thing, is he didn't give himself a pardon. And if you look at it, it all had to do with him.
Trump said he spent millions in legal fees and won, adding it's hard to say if they shouldn't have to go through the same thing. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. The Winnipeg Jets take it in overtime.
He's got some room. Neil Pionk for the win. Shoots, score!
Neil Pionk on TSN, just 17 seconds into overtime, lifting the Jets to a 3-2 win over the Colorado Avalanche, and finally giving head coach Scott Arniel something to smile about.
It took longer than 60 minutes, but it was a battle. It was, we had lots of zone time against them. They certainly got lots against us. We had to use our whole bench to be strong tonight, like I mentioned about. With that top unit of McKinnon and those guys, but I really liked how we played, and there was a lot of good things off of that.
Next up, a rematch against a team that recently beat Winnipeg. The Jets host Utah tomorrow night. You can find more news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
7:36, time for the regional forecast. What is Thursday going to be like, Abby?
Light snow and ice crystals in the northern part of the province, and we are seeing clear conditions down south later. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, light snow being spotted at the airport at this time, -19 in the city, becoming cloudy, then it should clear up. We hit a high of -15 later. The wind chill this morning feels much colder than that. It feels like -33, and tonight it drops to around -11. In Morden and the Pembina Valley regions, we're seeing temperatures around -21 also. Further we go west to Brandon, where we have temperatures around -19. Light snow being spotted there this time. The high will be around -12. The wind chill this morning is around -33. In the Parkland region, Dauphin is seeing cloudy conditions with temperatures around -15. The highs would get to -10. The wind chill gets to feel like -32 this morning. In the Interlake region, Gimli's at -20. Clear skies we're seeing. Expect a high of -14 today, but the wind chill feels like -34. In the Pamphlet Flon, we're seeing light snow at this time. Temperatures around -15, -16. The high would be around -7, but it's going to feel much colder with the wind chill around -25. Now we move up north. Thompson sitting at -16. Light snow falling there this morning. High of -13. The wind chill feels like -26. And then we travel further north to Churchill. Temperatures around -17 at this time. Ice crystals spotted there. High of -13. The wind chill feels like -22. So for both areas, it's going to be chilly evenings. In summary, cold, breezy weather with wind chills, making it feel colder across board. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at -19 and some sunshine in the forecast.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, this morning, obviously way safer than yesterday, but what's happening out there?
Yeah, just one traffic issue out there to keep an eye out for. Westbound Springfield between Henderson and Rothesay. Got a call from Vic probably about 40 minutes or so ago, letting me know that there's about 6 or so fire trucks blocking the entirety of westbound Springfield in that area there. Might still be an issue, might not. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet out there. But if you see something going on, particularly on the sidewalks, I actually got a call from one listener who wants to head out, but she's just recovering from an injury and wants to know what the sidewalks are like in the north end. So if you hit the sidewalks in the north end or anywhere else in the city or the trails, anything like that, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. Let us know what you're seeing so people know what it's like on foot. 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next, let's build on a story you heard in the news about that 2-year-old Manitoba boy. He is now home after a visit to the Health Sciences Centre took an unexpected turn. Last week, Charlene Francois took her son to the ER because she was concerned about a cyst on his collarbone. She says the nurses tried to insert an IV into his arm several times before they got it in. The next morning, her son's hand turned purple. His arm became severely swollen. Francoise spoke to CBC reporter Zabina Ahmed about when she discovered the swelling.
I woke up at around 6 o'clock in the morning because he kept waking up every hour through the night crying, and I was like wondering what's going on. Why is he crying? That morning I tried to pick him up. He screamed like he was in pain, and I was like, what's going on? So I started looking through his body, looking what's going on and trying to find why he's crying. So when I looked through his body, I noticed his arm was swollen, like his hand was purple. His whole arm was swelling right under his armpit to his fingertips. And then that's when I paged the nurses, and I was like, look at his hand. I was like, he wasn't supposed to look like this. And they looked at his hand, and they're like, oh my God, okay, we're going to remove the IV. So when they came back in to remove the IV, so from all the fluid building into his arm, when they removed the IV tape, they peeled it, and it peeled his skin right off. And so he ended up getting first-degree burns. But they said, thank God I seen it, because if I didn't see it within that hour, he would have lost feeling to his whole arm. They got a skin surgeon to come check his arm because they thought they would have to do surgery on his arm. And thank God they don't have to do surgery, but his arm is really bad. And so I was pretty upset because I said, I didn't come in for any problem with his arm. His arms were fine. I came in because he needed treatment for his cyst, but his problem with his cyst got dealt with. So now only problem I got to deal with now is his whole arm healing.
So what about the arm healing now?
They said it's going to heal proper and everything, but they said it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it's been getting worse. It looks a lot worse than it did when it actually did happen. The swellen's going down, but the the blisters and everything look a lot bad. They come change his bandage every day and check on it, but that's what they said. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So I was like, so he can get more blisters on his arm because of all the fluid coming out of his arm? Because his arm, the swellen's finally just going down. But I guess from the swelling going down, his arm's still blistering up. They say it's not going to scar, but it sure looks like it's going to scar because he can't bend when he tries to bend his arm, he cries because the burn's right in the center of his arm. He's seeing a skin surgeon right now. She comes to check his arm every day to see how it is. But all she's been saying to me lately is it's going to heal, it's going to get better. And then that's why I was like, well, it's not just that. It's just the whole process of dealing with the pain situation, what he should not have been dealing with.
And then now, I mean, how do you feel like as a mother and seeing this, like your child went through this? How do you feel right now, and what do you want to do about this?
I'm shocked. I'm just hoping, because they're saying he's not going to have scarring or anything from the burn, but the way it looks like he is going to have scarring because it looks bad. And then that's what I was telling the surgeon when she was looking at it, because she's like, oh, it doesn't look like we have to do surgery on his arm. Well, it's going to heal over. He won't have no scars. But I was like, are you sure about that? Are you sure he's going to have full function to his arm? He's not going to have no scarring to where it's going to hurt him? And then she's like, oh, no, he shouldn't. And I was like, well, I'm really hoping he doesn't, because that's going to affect him for his whole life. The nurses here made a report about it, but they're not really doing anything. Like the manager here came and talked to me this morning and about the whole situation, but she said she's sorry about what happened, that she doesn't want it to happen again, because the nurse he had through the night came in twice, and then I found out they were supposed to check the patient every single hour. They said the fluid went into his arm. It would have been a couple hours fluid going into his arm. So a couple hours of fluid going into his arm. If the nurse was coming in every hour to do his check on his IV, she would have noticed it was happening. But when I woke up that morning, his whole hand and his fingertips were purple, and his arm was swollen like a balloon. His arm's still quite swollen, but like the swellen's going down slowly, but it's not going down as much. Like it's still chubby and whatnot, but they said it's going to take a while because of how much fluid went in. Because they had him on fluid because he wasn't eating or wasn't drinking anything, so they put him on fluids.
So now what next do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a lawyer about it because, yeah, I'm not going to let them get away with what they did to my baby's arm. That's unacceptable of what they did because he wasn't supposed to be in for that. Like, that wasn't the reason why we were here. And now it's just causing a big problem because it affects him at night times because when he sleeps, he's in pain. And from how much pain he was in, they had to put him on morphine for it. The Tylenol they were giving him wasn't doing anything for his pain because how much pain he was in. We would have been home a while ago. We could have been home yesterday because his cyst was dealt with. And we're only here because they want to make sure his arm's healing proper. So, but they said if they said they can send me home with the bandages and the ointments and whatnot to bandage up his arm every day. But that's what I mean. Like, him bathing, it's going to affect his bathing now because it's going to hurt. I'm hoping that when I take him home, Tylenol helps his pain because I can't go home and be giving him morphine.
Trilena Francois speaking there with CBC reporter Zabina Ahmed about her son's experience at the hospital. Francois' son was discharged, by the way, yesterday afternoon. Shared Health sent us a statement. It says, quote, on behalf of our care teams, we offer our sincerest apologies to the patient and their family for their experience, end quote. They also say this incident is being investigated and their patient relations office will reach out to the family.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
7:47 a.m. the time right now, and Winterruption is well underway here in Winnipeg. That means until Sunday, local venues across the city will continue to host local musicians. And tonight at the Handsome Daughter, this band's going to take the stage. Here's Virgo Rising on CBC with Goat Footed. You can check them out. This is Virgo Rising, local band. Tune's called Goat Footed. You can check them out at Winter Option. So that's well underway. Until Sunday, as I mentioned, all venues all around town, local venues are hosting local musicians. And tonight, actually, is when you can check out Virgo Rising. They're going to be playing The Handsome Daughter. Right now, light snow falling in Winnipeg, and we've been right around minus 19 for most of the morning here in Brandon. It is minus 19 degrees, and also in Winnipeg, we're sitting at minus 19. Well, next on the program, Premier Bob Canoe often says that the economic horse drives the social cart. A new federal inventory, though, might suggest that that horse may need a little coaxing out of the stable. Natural Resources Canada says Manitoba ranks second last among the provinces in terms of the dollars devoted to major mining, energy, and forestry projects. Now, we heard part of this on the news, but let's get into more detail with CBC's Bartley Kivas. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what does this inventory actually take stock of? What do they consider?
This is an annual inventory of major natural resource projects under construction in Canada or planned for the next 10 years. And the report's dated September 2024. It was released last week. It says there are $1.7 billion worth of major mining and energy projects in the pipe in Manitoba. That might sound like a lot, but only Prince Edward Island has fewer dollars devoted to major natural resource projects. Saskatchewan, which is closest to us and more similar to us in terms of geographic area and population, Saskatchewan has almost $27 billion of these projects on the go.
So $27 billion next door in Saskatchewan, and you said we have 1.7?
That is correct.
How complete is the inventory?
Well, this inventory encompasses private sector and public sector projects, and some of them are very concrete, like Manitoba Hydro's upgrades to the generating station at Pointe de Bois in eastern Manitoba, and others are more like wish list projects, including a still hypothetical transmission line from Churchill all the way up the west coast of Hudson Bay into Nunavut. Now, this inventory has its critics. Robert Parsons teaches sustainability economics at the University of Manitoba. He says he questions the methodology and says the list of projects isn't complete.
It's hard to tell what actually is in and what actually is out. And I have some concerns because I think there are some things that are at least relatively close to proceeding ahead that I don't think are in that list. So we're being dissed a little bit. Now, I think it is not a damnation type report for us, but it is cautionary. I think we have to look at that.
Parsons says Manitoba has to do more in terms of sustainable energy, particularly when it comes to building significant biofuels plants and actually mining critical minerals instead of just talking about how important critical minerals are.
So what does the mining sector have to say?
Well, I spoke to John Morrissey. He's a co-director of the Mining Association of Manitoba, and he says the inventory undervalued one major project by hundreds of millions of dollars, and that project is a pair of open-pit gold mines planned for just east of Lynn Lake in northern Manitoba. And Morris's Alamos Gold out of Toronto plans to spend $1 billion building these mines over the next 3 years.
When this project does come online, it's 600 people going to be working to build it and 450 operating it afterwards. So that'll definitely have a big impact here in Manitoba.
And the NDP government, what is their response to this?
Well, I spoke with Jamie Moses, the Natural Resources Minister, and I asked him about the report, and he wouldn't address it directly. He simply said Manitoba is working hard to promote mining and supports the development of critical minerals. The report also says 14 major projects were canceled or put on hold last year. Wayne Wasco, the interim PC leader, he says that's evidence Manitoba has no economic development plan. And as you often hear with these back and forth exchanges, Jamie Moses says it's the former PC government who dithered on mining and energy for 7 years.
Bartley, thanks for coming in with the report today.
You're more than welcome.
That is the CBC's Bartley Kivas at CBC Manitoba here, a reporter. You can read his story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Corey Funk's going to pop in because he and I have been talking about the Oscar nominations, and they are out. They've just come out in the last half hour. Here we were watching specifically for one, and it didn't get a nomination.
I was refreshing the feed, and Universal Language, Matthew Rankin's Universal Language.
So this is local, has local ties.
Filmed in Winnipeg, and actually features when it's not just one of those things that's filmed in Winnipeg like a Hallmark movie, but it takes place and set in Winnipeg in this kind of surrealist world where it's Canada, but it's also Iranian.
Yeah.
And the trailer, you got to check it out. It's really cool, but still very Winnipeggy. Like, it's so interesting.
And we were watching it because we've spoken with him, and because also it was shortlisted by Canada as one of the options for Canada to go in to be a nominee. It has not been nominated, but Rankin's going to be on this afternoon.
Yes, on Up to Speed this afternoon. So you have to tune in to see, to hear more about the film, because it's really fascinating. It's still worth a watch no matter what.
Absolutely. So you hear all about that, and you can check out the Oscar nods. We're about to hear more on World Report about who else got nominated and who was quote unquote shut out, because there's always discussion about that every time the Oscar nods come out. It is right now 4 minutes to 8 o'clock. Corey also is obviously directing the show and covering traffic here. So we haven't had any major issues. We had that one issue on Springfield. That's between Henderson and Rothesay. Any news on whether that's cleared yet?
I haven't heard any updates, but if you do have them for me, you can give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, in advance of headlines, let's dip into your weather this Thursday morning. Still pretty decent out there, minus 19 degrees with some light snow. That frigid cold, though, still might bite you. The wind chill is at minus 33 this morning. The cloud cover this morning, though, should clear out for this afternoon. Then we get some more clouds overnight. The winds are going to pick up, gusting 30 to 50 from the south. The temperature, though, is going to rise overnight and be minus 11 by morning. And then tomorrow we are expecting a couple centimeters of snow to round out the week. Right now, though, let's go, as mentioned, to Heather Wells at 3 minutes to 8 o'clock for our CBC Manitoba News Centre headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, almost 36 people who live at the Manwin Hotel, ordered out after city inspectors found safety deficiencies, are now back. Nowhere else to go. Marion Willis at St. Boniface Street Link says more work on that building, the Manwin, needs to be done, but forcing people out, she says, is not a solution. We're going to hear from the owner coming up. And the Manitoba Wildlife Federation says confusion and extreme opposition doomed a proposed ecological corridor in western Manitoba. The federally funded project along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Wildlife Federation's Rob Olson says landowners worried the corridor might restrict their ability to farm, fish, and hunt. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, just a reminder that CBC is on site this week and next. CBC Manitoba's Communities in Focus is looking at the Gen Z experience on campus at the University of Manitoba. So there's office hours there at the Fireside Lounge. And there's also going to be another live show. Up to Speed was there yesterday. They're there next week. In addition, there's a special town hall discussion on Tuesday afternoon, and it is all around the experience of international students. So if you are a U of M international student, we hope that we see you next Tuesday afternoon. If you want to read all about the details of Communities in Focus and how we just really are spending time there, as we do in all communities and spaces for this series, just to listen. So if you want to read more about it, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, coming up, speaking not of international students, but of newcomers, we continue our series this morning exploring what it's really like to be a newcomer, not just across the country, but here in Manitoba where we live. We're going to hear from a newcomer here who says that Canada is great. She's happy she's here, but she does find people tend to be a little icy, is her word. We're going to hear what she means by that and what kind of encounters that she has had as our series continues after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Stay with us on 89.3.
On Cue with Tom Power.
So imagine you're cast as an actor in a film, but there's no script, there's no plot. Your job is to create the character from the time they were born until their mid-50s. That was the challenge that faced Marianne Jean-Baptiste in the new film Hard Truths. She'll be here to tell you what made it worth it.
Oh, you can pipe down and all standing there like an ostrich.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Undocumented migrants in the United States are on edge as Donald Trump launches his plan to deport millions of people. Migrant support groups are fighting back. Others argue, though, these raids are necessary. That story coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. By the end of business hours today, we will know exactly who is in the race to take over as leader of the Liberal Party. Candidates have until 5 p.m. Eastern to get their nomination packages in. But already, some frontrunners are starting to emerge, and so are their proposed policies. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau with more. And Janice, new leader, new direction for the Liberal Party?
Seems like, Marcia. Let's start with a pretty stunning admission from Chrystia Freeland that a government led by her would not move forward with legislation to implement changes to the way capital gains are taxed, backtracking on a policy from her own budget less than a year ago, which she'd promoted as fundamental to tax fairness in this country, and now sowing more confusion smack in the middle of tax season about how this reversal might work. Yesterday, Freeland's campaign laid out that the lower tax rates small businesses and entrepreneurs are going to pay in Donald Trump's America for the next few years. Well, Canada has to respond to that if it doesn't want to risk losing both jobs and investment. And then we have the consumer carbon tax. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives have been jonesing to run an election on this for months now. But it appears that the top contenders in this leadership race may have killed it already. None of them support continuing to increase it this spring. There is space between them on whether to abandon it altogether or just pause it, but how to adjust the overall emissions strategy to make up for it, that's still a big question mark. No minister more identified with this tax than Stephen Guilbeault. He's endorsing Mark Carney, and he's been pained to explain this about-face.
I have to come to the conclusion that Canadians aren't supporting it. I've tried. I've worked really hard on this for many years, and we tried our best.
And there's another signature Liberal tax measure that may also be on life support in the days to come. The digital services tax, Canada's attempt to make global tech giants pay a 3% tax on their Canadian earnings, something the NDP campaigns hard on. Freeland invested a lot of political capital trying to negotiate a way to do this multilaterally. But Donald Trump's administration signaled earlier this week a global deal on this ain't going to happen. So if Canada doesn't pull this tax, it's highly likely the Americans are going to retaliate at what's already a threatening point in the relationship.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Donald Trump has given his first sit-down interview since Monday's inauguration. The U.S. president sat in the Oval Office with Sean Hannity of Fox News. The wide-ranging interview included comments by Trump that he may take revenge on his predecessor. The CBC's Katie Simpson has more.
Any Canadian tuning into Donald Trump's interview, hoping to get some sort of insight or update about his latest tariff threat, well, the issue didn't come up. Instead, the president slammed his predecessor over Joe Biden's decision to grant preemptive pardons to members of his own family, lawmakers, and other public servants.
And you know, the funny thing, maybe the sad thing, is he didn't give himself a pardon. And if you look at it, it all had to do with him.
Several times, Trump was asked directly whether he'd like Biden or others to be investigated either by Congress or the Attorney General, to which he began musing about revenge.
I went through 4 years of hell. I spent millions of dollars in legal fees, and I won. But I did it the hard way. It's really hard to say that they shouldn't have to go through it also. It is very hard to say that.
Trump also threatened to withhold federal assistance to California unless it changes its wildfire fighting tactics. He's standing by his decision to delay the TikTok ban, downplaying concerns about national security, saying the app made him more popular with younger voters. And he again promised to release classified documents about the assassination of JFK. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Firefighters in Los Angeles County are dealing with another fast-moving fire. A helicopter dumps water on flames from the Hughes fire. It is about 70 kilometers northwest of Los Angeles. More than 50,000 people are on an evacuation alert. But officials say the situation is different than the fires closer to the city. Matthew Van Hagen is with the local fire department.
We're not dealing with a large population and a large amount of residential homes, as we saw with those two fires. Out here, it's more sparsely populated. However, out here. We are dealing with high winds along with thick fuel bed and steep topography.
There are reports this morning of a new fire that has broken out near Bel Air. The fire is threatening structures in the Los Angeles residential enclave and has forced the shutdown of a major highway. In the town of Jasper, Alberta, some residents are still waiting on temporary housing. 6 months ago, wildfire ravaged the Alberta community, and as Julia Wong tells us, officials say plans to start rebuilding are stuck in limbo.
Here we are on the ground, and it's all ready for something, and the something isn't coming.
Loni Clettle stands in an empty lot in the town of Jasper. She's disappointed. After losing her home in the wildfire, she's been in a hotel for 6 months, and temporary housing promised by the Alberta government has not arrived yet.
This further state of limbo is actually awful.
The Alberta government offered roughly $100 million to build permanent single detached houses. But there's only room for 60 of those units on the parcels of land set aside by Parks Canada. The town says it needs high-density housing for more than 600 households. Alberta's Community, Seniors and Social Services Minister Jason Nixon says the province isn't budging from its single-family home position.
If we don't have a project that meets those requirements, then this money can't be spent.
Parks Canada is working to get interim high-density housing, but without the province's contribution, there won't be enough for everyone who needs it. Director of Recovery for the municipality of Jasper, Michael Fark.
And especially now that we understand that the province is not going to be bringing any interim housing, we need to find other solutions.
As for Clettle, she's hopeful things get worked out, and soon, because if not...
We have no idea where we're going to be, and that's not a great feeling.
But one felt by many still looking for a place to call home. Julia Wong, CBC News, Jasper, Alberta.
More than 1,000 LGBTQ plus couples in Thailand tied the knot today. The law giving them the same rights as heterosexual couples has now come into effect. Thailand is one of just 3 countries in Asia to recognize same-sex unions and the first in Southeast Asia. Patrick Falk reports.
At one of the swankiest shopping malls in Bangkok, some 180 same-sex couples married in an event celebrating a legal milestone. For 33-year-old Purnapus Chirasukon and her partner, it was momentous to finally be able to say, I do. I feel so many things have been unlocked and our definition of family feels more complete than ever, she says. The new law grants same-sex couples the same adoption and inheritance rights as heterosexual couples in the kingdom for the first time. It also takes out gender-specific terms like husband and wife in the Thai civil code covering marriage, replacing them with terms like individual and spouse. Thailand has long been considered LGBTQ-friendly, but same-sex marital recognition was hard-fought in the predominantly Buddhist country. The government hopes it might help boost rainbow tourism. Taiwan and Nepal are the only 2 other places in the region to legalize it. Canada legally approved same-sex marriage in 2005. Thailand's milestone comes at a time when many people in the US are concerned the new Trump administration could roll back LGBTQ rights as it did during his previous term in office. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Singapore.
The 2025 Academy Award nominees are out. And you may not be surprised by the name of at least one film that has been repeated over and over again.
The nominees for performance by an actress in a supporting role: Monica Barbaro in A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande in Wicked, Felicity Jones, The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini in Conclave, and Zoe Saldana in Emilia Perez.
Popular, you're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys.
Wicked was also nominated for Best Original Score, Achievement in Sound, Best Actress, Best Costume Design, Best Motion Picture, and the list goes on. But it was not the most nominated film of the day. Another musical, Emilia Perez, got 13 nods in total. The Oscars are being awarded on March 2nd.
Cause you've got an awfully long way to go. Don't be offended by my frank announcement.
We aren't offended if you're singing along. That is the latest. From World Report, I'm Marcia Young.
Power sister and advisor. There's nobody wiser, not when it comes to
Apparently
apparently our very own Corey Funk could be singing along. Is that right?
It's contagious. I can't help it. My wife's into it, and
I haven't
now
seen
I
it
am
yet.
too.
I've seen it on stage, but I haven't seen the movie yet.
It's good.
Yeah, I bet. Well, now everyone knows it's good because it's been nominated for all the Oscars, right? If it was already buzzing, now it's become official. We'll see if it wins. It is lightly snowing in Winnipeg, a little bit slippery out there. We'll update with Corey traffic in a moment and get into your forecast. Thanks for joining us this Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. Well, coming up this half hour on the program, we are continuing our series looking at the reality for some newcomers who make their way to our province. This is part of a national look at how welcoming Canada is or isn't. So this half hour on the program, we're going to hear from a newcomer who says Canada is great. She's happy she's here, but there is a bit of a challenge. She said sometimes people do tend to be a little bit icy. So we're going to hear about that, but we're also going to hear about the reality of the experience. So stay tuned. This is part of a series of interviews, as I mentioned, that we're doing. So we started this yesterday, and we have more conversations to come. I also want to thank all of you who've been writing to me, because I asked yesterday if you're a newcomer or you have experience with this topic, if you want to weigh in. And a number of you have been pitching stories. So I've been reading your emails, and we'll just keep those conversations going as we seek to just be the best province ever, right? Right now, let's get to Heather Wells, who has other stories from our province and news headlines this morning.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg mother wants to know how fluid from an IV ended up in her 2-year-old's arm tissue, causing swelling, skin tearing, and first-degree burns. Trilena Francois says she took her son to Children's Emergency at HSC last week because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. He was given intravenous antibiotics, and Francois says he ended up with a blistered arm. She plans to hire a lawyer. Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to major mining and energy projects. That is according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. Only PEI has fewer dollars devoted to construction in those sectors. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, what's going on out there now?
Right now, Winnipeg -19. We're seeing that light snow in some parts of the city and at the airport. Cloud conditions will roll in, but it should clear as we get late into the afternoon. It will be cold, though. We get to a high of -15. The wind chill makes it feel like -33 this morning, and we see some clouds return near midnight with some breezy winds from the south. Temperatures will climb to -11 as we get into the overnight period, and light snow is expected tomorrow, 2 centimeters during the day. Other regions similar to Winnipeg, overall it's cold, breezy, and snow will taper off in most of the regions, and we'll see some clear conditions.
It could be really strange too, because Monday they're saying like a high of 1.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Like by overnight, we should see -2.
Yeah, I know. It's just so strange the way it's going back and forth. We've had interviews about that, by the way. You can find those on our YouTube page if you want to rewatch why this is all happening. But for today, as Abby said, light snow -18 currently. All right, Corey, we've had a kind of quiet morning in traffic.
Yeah, nice compared to yesterday. But I'll just flag one thing that may still be an issue. I heard probably just over an hour or so ago from Vic, who said westbound Springfield, there was about 6 fire trucks blocking the entirety of westbound Springfield between Rothesay and Henderson. May still be an issue, may not. Love to get an update on that or anything else you're seeing. Also got an update from Dan on a bike, who's on those Southwest Rapid Transit bike lanes. He said they're looking lovely this morning. But if you have updates of anything you're seeing out there on the sidewalks, bike lanes, roads, highways, give me a call. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour, for Rebecca Rivondo, moving to Winnipeg was a dream come true. Rebecca is originally from Zimbabwe, and although she says she loves her home country, she did dream of living in Canada. So she made the move here over 2 years ago, and she's happy to be here. But the reality of living in Canada does not always match up with the expectations. CBC, as you may have been hearing, has launched a new series called Welcome to Canada. It is looking at the experiences and exploring the perspective of immigrants all across the country. And for the next number of days, we're exploring what it is like to be a newcomer in Manitoba. Today, Rebecca is in studio to talk about her story and her experience. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning, Marcy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for making time for us.
It's a pleasure.
We should probably start just so people can understand a bit of your story about, more about why you wanted to move to Canada it was 2023, right?
Yes, correct. I love construction, and I wanted to go to a country where I could study, do the coursework, and also do like a practical as I'm studying. I looked all over the world. Canada had the program that I wanted, and Red River Polytech was the place. So that's why I came here, basically to come and study construction management.
What was it about? You came here for Red River. Did you know much about Winnipeg? I'm just curious. Did you do the research first, or how did you, come to understand this is the right institution for me educationally, but what is this city about?
To be honest, for me, I was more focused on the program. So I was I wanted a certain program. Literally, there's nowhere else in the world that has this kind of that offers this double package for me. So that sold it for me. And I was like, you know what, wherever it takes me, I'll find out as I go. So I did research, like Winnipeg has got an amazing cultural base, with the ballet, there's a lot going on here. So I did see that. And then I also saw it's the third coldest place in the world. So I was just like, you know what? People live there. No one's dead. I'm not going to die. I was like, I'll just go.
You made the decision for, obviously, as you said, for education first, the program specifically. You came on your own first?
Yes, I did. I came by myself. It made better sense for me to come by myself, just looking at the cost of immigrating to another country. Yep. So if I'd come with my family, even just the cost of an Airbnb as one person renting one room, as to renting a whole apartment, already, like the moment you step here, it becomes very expensive. Even coming on, if you get an Uber, I've got 2 young kids. So they need to have car seats and all that. There's a lot more math that needs to happen in terms of bucks. And I was just like, it's better for me to come by myself first and see how things are, settle in, and then my family can follow.
Are they here now?
Yes, they are. Thank
Okay.
goodness.
And your family is it your husband and 2 kids?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
How old are they?
My daughter just turned 4 this month, and my son is turning 8 next month. So, yeah.
How long were you here by yourself? That must have been, I can't imagine what that's like, right? You're making the decision.
13 months.
But yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
Leaving the kids.
Yeah.
Before you moved here, did you have expectations, I guess, about what your life might be like in Canada overall?
I didn't have expectations because I know anytime you have expectations about anything, you will definitely be disappointed. My only expectation was my academic expectation that what I read on the Red River website is exactly what I'm going to receive. And I'm happy. It is exactly what I'm getting. So I was okay there. Everything else, I was like, you know what? You don't pick or choose, what's thrown at you. Just take it as it comes. Yeah.
What were the things that, do you want to start positive or you want to start with challenges? You get to pick.
Let's start with positive.
Okay. What was positive when you moved, about Winnipeg, about obviously our series is about feeling welcomed, or, what did you find positive about your experience being a Winnipegger?
Well, I got here in August, so the weather was nice. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I did when I arrived, I got to my Airbnb. And then I walked down Portage Avenue to go to Canada, where you sort of check into the country. I'm forgetting. Arrive Canada. Sorry.
Yep.
Yes. Check into the country. And as I was walking, I saw a lot of things. And, you kind of have this kind of perception about a place. And as you walk into downtown, you see a lot of things. And some things are not nice. Like I saw people on drugs, and I saw things like that. But everything was nice in terms of the orderliness of the place. Things were very orderly here. And when I got to Arrive Canada, they were very nice to me. My appointment was put in and everything. That was a seamless process. So I was happy about that. The bus system works. In my country, we're really packed in public transport here. I was like, oh my gosh, I get a seat. I don't have to squash with anyone. So that was really nice as well. So yeah, it was okay.
So you notice some of obviously we have deep social problems that cause people to be on the streets. You were walking, so you're noticing these things. Was that a surprise to you?
Very much. Everything that I saw, I never saw it on the internet. This information, maybe, I don't know how media works here, but I didn't know, like, there's a drug problem here. Like, okay, in my country, there is also a drug problem, but the scale of the problem here is much, much more than where I come from, because people are more social, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from, like what you're saying, it's a social problem. People are lonely, or people cannot handle pressure or whatever it is. But where I come from, every day, the moment you open your eyes, it's pressure. You have to make a plan about electricity. We have 18-hour power cuts. You can do maybe 2 months with no electricity. So you need to have solar. You need to cook on the fire. Like, from the moment you open your eyes, you're making a plan. But here, I don't know if people are good at adjusting to making a plan.
So let's move to some of the challenges that you noticed. I know some of it, I understand, comes around sort of the idea of what you would have experienced in, and tell me if I'm characterizing this correctly, building community, in Zimbabwe, where you're from, and then what building community is like in Canada. They're different things, and that was a surprise to you, I understand.
It was a big surprise. I think also because of my age, I'm slightly older from when most people come to Canada in terms of for education. That is, I'm a mature student, so I'd sort of built my life, like everything was set. I knew, like, I could get support this way, this way, this way. I knew my ins and outs of my country. Then you come to a new place and you're like, oh my goodness, I have been, like, put into a system for years, like over a decade, where I knew where to get everything that I needed. And then you have to start again. For example, I walked into Walmart. The first time I walked into Walmart, I was there for 30 seconds. I literally walked back out. I was so overwhelmed. Like, there was just so many products, and like the place was so big. And I was like, I know nothing. I don't even know what soap to use anymore. Like, in my country, I had my brands. I was like, I just walk in, like 10 minutes, I'm out. But I was like, I have to start again. I have to read everything. And there's a lot more options. In my country, there's like 3 things for one thing. There's like, I don't know, 30.
Did you have help to navigate what some of those differences were country to country?
When I came here, I knew one person, and she was a friend of a friend, and she was very kind. I'm so thankful for her, because when I arrived, when I got to my Airbnb, like like what I saw, I just couldn't believe what I saw. And I was like, I need to move. I need to go to a hotel. So she's like, no, let me come to you and check how it is. And she got me a bus pass, and she took, paid for my first meal. And she was just telling me this. Then she's like, whenever you go somewhere and you need information, I'll be at work, but you can send me a message and I'll let you know how to get it done.
So you found the support.
Yes.
What do you mean when you say you couldn't believe what you saw? When you were, was it the overwhelmed feeling you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
I was overwhelmed. It was just too much.
What's it been like for you to try and find and create community? Because the word that I was using, where at times you felt that the Canadians can be icy, that's not my word. That was something that you felt.
Yes.
So can you give us an example of that?
Like on the bus. Let me go back to the bus, because I used the bus for the first year I was here. Like, it's cheaper to have the bus. I know people sometimes cringe, like, oh, the bus. But, like, people on the bus sometimes are actually nice. You can speak to 1 or 2 people.
It's public transport.
It's public transport, yeah. So, for me, I love the bus, even still now. If I could, I would. It just doesn't make sense with kids. But when I first came here, everyone had earphones on. In my country, like, people would be talking. I'd be like, how are you? How was your day? You'd all have a chat. You'd laugh, whatever. You don't even know this person. But I think we have, like, counseling in that way. Like, everywhere you go, you're kind of being counseled as you go. You can just stop in the road and someone will be like, are you okay? But here, like, people just walk past. Or people have their earphones on. And you're like, but we're people. Let's chat and, like, see what's going on, because everyone is going through something or wants to share something. Like, it is lonely, but every day you're passing someone. Why don't you communicate? It was very strange for me. I didn't understand why things are that way.
How does that impact your sense of welcoming or community? Is even in terms of support for, like, building your life here, building, as you said, fulfilling needs, whether it's community around you for help with things, or maybe people just dropping by. What did you notice that was different there?
I didn't like it, first of all, because I'm also a very social person. I love people. I mean, I've got 14 brothers and sisters. My family is huge. Like, even in my home, my own personal home in Zimbabwe, we used to stay with lots of people, and people just come and they just don't leave. And you're like, in African culture, it's okay. You don't make appointments. You just arrive at someone's house. People accommodate you. We're here now. You have to make appointments for everything to see someone. Like, you have to email someone first. I'm like, just call me. That's the kind of culture I come from. We're very, like, very direct. And here it's more like people are more very particular with the boundaries around their time, which is okay. I mean, I understand the society now, but then I did not feel welcome. I felt isolated. I felt like I was on my own. And I was like, okay, the only way to adjust is kind of tweak things slowly and find people who are like you. And over time, I managed to. I grew. The first place I started with is my own community, Zimbabweans. You know, I got in touch with some women, some older women who used to come, and they had a prayer group, and that's where they would come and pick me up, and then we'd go and pray, and then we did a conference, and then from there I was like, okay, fine, I'm good there, but I need to grow. Canada is diverse, you know. There's not only Zimbabweans here, there's people from all over, and I was like, okay, let me just try speak to someone else from a different culture, and that's how I grew my community. Now I can't even keep up with the number of people that I know, but in the beginning it was really like, you had to push yourself, and you get exhausted sometimes. You're like, I'm trying so hard. You know, like when are things going to start to balance? When am I going to start to feel comfortable in this new space? It was a lot.
I want to ask you what you think is needed to make it not a lot, to make it, better for newcomers to feel more at home or more quickly at home and connected. Because that's what community is about, right? Is connection. So how do you think things could be improved? What do you wish that you'd had?
I just wish when I first arrived here, I don't know how information could have been given to me that I'm like told, okay, these are people from your community. This isn't like given options, like, because you need to plug someone into a community quickly so that they can learn all the little, know-hows, like on a Wednesday at co-op, the car wash is half price and stuff like that, the regular wash. Like, you don't know that when you first arrive. And when you don't have information, you pay a lot more than you should. And Canada's not, it's like compared to where I come from, Canada's very expensive, so being able to make newcomers settle in and be able to understand like where they can get bargains about things, or like the immigration center. I found it out later. There's some information I needed. I didn't have a certain permit that would allow me to do my co-op when I was at school. And I need to get that permit. And then after researching, that's when I found out there's the immigration center, and I went there and they helped me to.
So we can close some
of
those. The country could close some of those gaps, and in Manitoba, some of those gaps would have made a difference to not only your loneliness, but practical things and saving money and knowing where to go. And
quickly.
Thank you very much for coming in and being so forthcoming and being part of our series. And good luck with your exams.
Thank you.
I know
Thank
you're
you so
writing
much,
exams
Marcy.
right now. Nice to meet you in person.
Nice.
Yeah. This has been Rebecca Ravondo with us, a Winnipeg newcomer, as part of our series exploring the reality of the experience of coming not just to Canada, but to Winnipeg.
Foot in front of the other, yes, I'm a traveler. Had to cross an ocean to get here. See, I'm from Africa, I'm from South America, Asia, man, I'm from everywhere. Lord knows the struggles I've had to endure to get me here. And where is here? Here's a place that I'm just still adjusting to. Feeling culture shock, seeing things that I'm not accustomed to. To make it worse, I left my family behind, so my sanity's in decline. Can I just have some peace of mind? Mind on the legal tender. Call my mama, tell her go to Western Union. I got some money I need to send you. But please remember, it's so hard for me when people looking at us and judge us like we're repeat offenders. I could do with some home cooking and decent weather. My source of smile is when I read your letters. What we seek is better. Through all your struggles and troubles, you gotta keep your head up. Keep your head up, what? Let the life I knew before, when you search for something more. Don't know what kind of struggles lie ahead for me, 'cause I'm an immigrant. All alone in my new home, meet my family on the phone. Don't know what kind of struggles lie ahead for me, 'cause I'm an immigrant. 'Cause I'm an immigrant. 'Cause I'm an immigrant.
We're listening to a tune that was written about the experience moving to Canada from Zambia. The artist is Chansa. And we're going to get you into your news with this music. I just want to mention, if you do need us late in the drive, 788-3093. And big thanks to people who worked on the items you heard on today's show. They are community reporter Shanley Vidal, associate producer Kalkadamu Legeda and Chide Kuma, as well as Chin Kai Chang, who's been behind the controls of YouTube helping out today. And of course, our live team, Abby Adiyemi, Kevin Nipatebo, and Corey Funk. In our news department, Megan Ketchison, as well as Aaron Broman. And we're about to hear from Heather Wells with your news at 8:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we keep warming up. We're at minus 18 right now. Increasing clouds this morning, then clearing later in the day, a high of minus 15. A Winnipeg mother wants to know how fluid from an IV ended up in her 2-year-old son's arm tissue, causing swelling, skin tearing, and first-degree burns. Trilina Francois says she took Logan to Children's Emergency at HSC last week because of a growing cyst on his collarbone. He was admitted and given intravenous antibiotics. It took the nurses, she says, 3 times before they could find a vein to insert the IV. Afterwards, Francois says Logan kept waking, crying, and by morning she saw his swollen and blistered arm.
I want the nurses that did it responsible for it, because who knows what it could have. They can do it to another kid. They can do it to anybody else.
Francois says when the nurses removed the IV tape, his skin peeled off. She says she is disappointed with her child's care and plans to hire a lawyer. Shared Health says it has apologized and is investigating. Manitoba lags behind most provinces when it comes to dollars devoted to major mining, energy, and forestry projects. That's according to a federal inventory of projects underway or planned for the next 10 years. Details from CBC's Bartley Kivas.
According to Natural Resources Canada, Manitoba has $1.7 billion worth of major mining and energy projects on the way. Only tiny Prince Edward Island has fewer dollars devoted to construction in these sectors. Robert Parsons, who teaches sustainability economics at the U of M, says a federal inventory misses some projects.
We're being dissed a little bit. Now, I think it is not a damnation type report for us, but it is cautionary.
John Morris, who co-directs Manitoba's Mining Association, says the survey undervalued a pair of gold mines planned for Lynn Lake. He says Alamos Gold plans to spend $1 billion on this project.
That'll definitely have a big impact here in Manitoba.
The survey also notes 14 major projects were cancelled in Manitoba over the past year. Interim PC leader Wayne Owasco says this shows the NDP government has no economic development plan. Natural Resources Minister Jamie Moses says it was the PCs who dithered on mining and energy. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
34 people living in the Manwin Hotel have been ordered to vacate the premises. The city issued the order earlier this month after inspectors found safety concerns. Akeem Kambamba has owned that Main Street hotel for 13 years. He says many of the tenants who initially complied with the order have since returned because they have nowhere else to go.
There's no room anywhere. The shelters are full. They can't find housing anywhere. The landlords with bigger buildings charge way more than they can afford. It's not 100% perfect, but people can live here. And the city should be reasonable not to kick people out in minus 40-degree weather.
The city says the order was necessary to encourage the owner to fix permit requirements. The city has a new offer to reopen the space at the Millennium Library for vulnerable people. Funding for the Community Connections Hub was cut last month. It had been staffed with library and crisis workers who connected patrons to social services. Now the Downtown Community Safety Partnership is offering to step in. Greg Burnett's organization already works with other agencies to help vulnerable Winnipeggers. Burnett says they would not be at the library to do security.
We're big into, pre-crisis. So we're talking to people beforehand, and we can be preventative in a lot of these things. So we have no intention to take over any type of security protocol or even the space on a whole. We really want to work together with everybody.
Burnett says his group is willing to take over the space in April and assess its effectiveness after 2 months. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation says confusion and extreme opposition doomed a proposed ecological corridor in western Manitoba. The federally funded project along the Little Saskatchewan River has been cancelled. The Wildlife Federation's Rob Olson says landowners felt they weren't sufficiently consulted and worried the corridor might restrict their ability to farm, fish, and hunt.
It was really kind of an awful process and a terrible outcome because people in the local community were kind of pitted against each other, and they were embattled and concerned and mad and upset.
The Little Saskatchewan River project would have created a belt of green space along the river from Riding Mountain National Park to the Assiniboine River. Well, this year's Oscar nominations are out.
Here are the 10 nominees for Best Motion Picture of the Year.
Honora, Alex Coco, Samantha Kwan, and Sean Baker, producers.
That's Honora heading up the list of Best Film nominees. However, Amelia Perez leads the field overall with 13 nominations. Quebec-born filmmaker Denis Villeneuve, whose film Dune Part 2 is also in the running for Best Picture. Canadian Pamela Anderson, who was considered a contender for Best Actress for her work on The Last Showgirl, was not nominated. The full list of nominees is on our website. Oscar night is March 2nd. More Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
That is Heather Wells in our news department. With a last quick look at the drive and the commute, Corey.
Yeah, those fire trucks I've been talking about all morning on Springfield are now clear, so no worries about that. Other than that, been pretty smooth commute overall.
Oh, all right, Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
And Abby, I guess you're the last word.
Yeah, light snow spotted in most of the regions, but the north is the cold part of the province. Right now, Winnipeg, we end in the show at -18. We should get to -15 later. And sometime tomorrow, we should see -2, getting us into the weekend.
No doubt. And then it warms up all the way as we get into Sunday. Thank you. I'm off tomorrow and Monday, and Faithful and Al will be here tomorrow hosting the show, and then Corey's going to take over hosting on Monday. So take care and be well, everyone. We will talk to you next week, and have a great rest of your Thursday. The Current's coming up next here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Big thanks to our leaders and units. Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer in the Current Affairs unit at CBC Manitoba, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba is Leif Larson. Take care.